please rise to honor our nation's flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Ms. Rostikowicz?
Yes.
Ms. Scott?
Here.
Mr. Conway?
Here.
Mr. Gignac?
Here.
Mr. Leary?
Here.
Ms. Martin?
Here.
Mayor Murphy?
Here.
7 present.
Thank you. We have under a special order of business the introduction of Sullivan School Principal Jacqueline Perrin. Madam Superintendent.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. As is the custom in our school district, we welcome our new principals officially to the City Hall chambers and to meet our school committee. And so tonight I welcome our newest addition to our administrative team, Ms. Jacqueline Perrin. Ms. Perrin will be the principal of the Sullivan Middle School. She comes with us with a good deal of experience and is most recently principal in the Dracut Public Schools, where she's been for a number of years. We welcome you, Jackie, and we wish you success and the love we all have for our students to come to you here in Lowell. So thank you very much for being here.
Thank you. I just wanted to take a quick moment just to tell you how thrilled I am to be coming back to Lowell. I am a former student of Lowell High. I'm thrilled to be coming back. Actually, some of my peers are here. And to be a member of the Sullivan School community is something that I'm very excited about. I'm looking forward to the hard work and the collaboration that we will have in this upcoming school year. So I thank you for the opportunity, and I look forward to working with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, and welcome. Next, we have under minutes, approval of the minutes of the regularly scheduled school committee meeting of Wednesday, June 20th, 2012. Motion to accept and place on file by Mr. Gignac, seconded by Mr. Conway. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. We have permission to enter July 18th. Madam Superintendent.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. To the Assessment Technology Incorporated for $59,000 to provide the Galileo K-12 online tool to develop, administer, and use customized standards-based tests and access multi-level disaggregated reports based on student demographic information that teachers can link to classroom instruction, provided by the Title I grant. To Learning Innovations at West Ed for $24,500 to provide professional development to Lowell High School administrators, department chairs, classroom and special education teachers, including alternative school staff, to learn key concepts related to the Common Core standards and their impact on curriculum instruction and assessment. Funding will be provided by the Title IIA grant. To the Durkin Company Incorporated for $63,001 to provide repair and maintenance service to a wide range of floor scrubbing machine equipment throughout the district over the next 3 school years. Funding will be provided by local budget, operations and maintenance, contracted services. To Anthony Febo for $6,000 to provide spoken word improvisation instruction to Lowell High School students attending the Compass Program 21st Century Grant in the afternoons and during summer school. Focus of the instruction shall be on verbal and written communication. Funding will be provided by the 21st Century Community Learning Centers grant. To John Boutsellis for $9,000 to provide photograph instruction to Lowell High School students attending the Compass Program 21st Century Grant in the afternoon and during summer school. Focus of instruction shall be on verbal and written communication as well as mathematics problem solving. Funding provided by the 21st Century Community Learning Grant. To Signet Electronic Systems Incorporated for $30,512 to provide for repair and service of security cameras at Lowell High School. Funding provided by local budget, operations and maintenance, contracted services. To Sealand Chambers for $5,000 to provide staff training which will directly benefit teachers by improving their capacity to utilize specific assistive technology instruments for special education students. Funding provided by Special Education 240 grant. To the City of Haverhill for $17,917 to provide for the out-of-district tuition costs for 2 students enrolled in receiving services as outlined in the special education IEPs. Funding provided by the school department budget special education tuition account. To Dorothy C. Eisenhower, MED, for $7,000 to provide consultation and training to special education teachers working with students with cochlear implants, and to observe these students as needed to make recommendations related to their individual education plans. Funding will be provided by the Special Education 240 grant. To Education Incorporated for $60,000 to provide academic support and tutoring services to special education students who are hospitalized. Funding provided through the Special Education Hospital Tutoring Account. To the Greater Lawrence Educational Collaborative, GLEC, for $1,566,943 to provide for the out-of-district tuition costs for 39 students enrolled in receiving services as outlined in the special education IEPs. Funding will be provided by the school department budget special education tuition account. To Justice Resource Institute Incorporated for $191,743 to provide out-of-district costs for 2 students enrolled in receiving services as outlined in their special education IEPs. Funding again provided by school department budget, special education tuition account. To the Lab Collaborative for $176,276 to provide for the out-of-district tuition for 2 students enrolled in receiving services as outlined in their special education IEPs. Funding provided by the school department budget, special education tuition account. To Melmac New England Incorporated for $239,666 to provide for the out-of-district tuition costs for 2 students enrolled in receiving services as outlined in their special education IEP. Again, funding provided by the school department budget, special education tuition account. To the Merrimack Special Education Collaborative for $667,113 to provide for out-of-district tuition costs for 16 students enrolled in receiving services as outlined in the special education IEP. Funding again provided by the school department budget, special education tuition account. To the Mount Prospect Academy Incorporated for $57,935 to provide for the out-of-district tuition costs for 1 student enrolled in receiving services as outlined in the special education IEP. Funding by the school department budget, special education tuition account. Professional Center for Handicapped Children Incorporated for $138,817 to provide for the out-of-district tuition costs for 2 students enrolled in receiving services according to their IEPs. Funding provided again by special education budget, special education tuition account. To the Robert F. Kennedy Children Action Corps Incorporated for $51,048 to provide for out-of-district tuition for 1 student enrolled in receiving services according to their IEP. Funding by the special education budget, special education account. To the Judge Rottenberg Educational Center Incorporated in the amount of $368,903 to provide the out-of-district tuition costs for 1 student enrolled in receiving services according to their IEP. Funding again provided by the school department budget, special education tuition account.
Thank you, Madam Superintendent. Any discussion? Mr. Conway.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, through you to the superintendent. I have a question on that, on the last one, the Judge Rottenberg Educational Center. $368,903 for 1 student. I'm not sure whether, if maybe, I'm sure you are aware of the fact that that particular facility has been under scrutiny in the last couple months because of the controversial methods that's being used at that facility, which obviously would concern me. The state Senate just voted to investigate them. I believe the Senate president made a comment that it's the only type of facility in the country that uses this, and they're being sued, and they've also been sued a number of times. And one, I'm just cautious to take a look at that. First of all, I think the fact that $368,903, that cost is absolutely outrageous, and I know it goes through the IEP. I mean, I understand that process, but in the IEP we have the goals and objectives and services that are going to meet the needs of that particular student. But also, I think that we're obviously aware of the fact that that there is a separate page that talks about placement, and the most appropriate placement that, you know, was this the most appropriate placement for this kind of cost? And is there a possibility that perhaps we can go back to the team and ask them if there might be something that would perhaps make a little bit more sense and still meet the needs of that particular student? Ma'am?
Madam Superintendent.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As a result of the IEP meeting, this was a recommendation of the team, and this was the agreed-upon placement. Whether or not that can be undone, it has to continue with the entire process. In most cases, don't usually question what the teams come to, as that is what happens in the whole process with teams. If you like, I could consult with the special education director. However, it is normally not my place to look into that. They take care of things, they make recommendations that we approve all the time.
Well, I understand that, but I mean, when we're talking about, you know, spending money wisely, when I take a look, I thought there might have been a mistake, and I know that we've seen it in the past, where somebody has said, you know, it's one student, no, it's really 10, or it's 2, it's really 5, and I was certainly hoping that there might be some type of a difference here. When I saw $368,000, I mean, that just seemed absolutely, it was ludicrous. And then when I started to do a little bit of research to find out how much other facilities charge, and there's no doubt they charge a lot of money. It's amazing. It really is. But I happen to have that particular Judge Rotenberg's Educational Center, the profile right here in front of me, and it says 6/14/12 was the last update. And again, what I'm concerned is because we're voting on this, and a lot of times we go through it, and there's a lot of money involved. So I want to make sure the money is spent, you know, in the most efficient way. And when I take a look at the residential rate, it has tuition rate, it has the program description of this of the company, and then it has the residential rate, and the residential rate is $406.06 per diem. Now, if you multiply that out, assuming we're talking 365 days, we're talking about $148,190. And that's when I took a look at it and I said, well, how does that balance $148,109 versus $368,903? And all I'm saying is that, again, I think that, you know, this is what we always do, and we always accept what the SPED director says. Well, I think maybe what we should do is take a look at it and find out, is there a more efficient way of doing this? And that's why I'm just making a suggestion that perhaps that team, again, I don't know the specific details of that particular child, but when I'm looking at the numbers here, I mean, wouldn't you say $368,903 is a little outrageous for one student?
I do believe that it's a very high cost, absolutely. I do believe that,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, so I mean, again, I'm going to vote on it because it's obviously it's in front of us tonight and so forth. But I think that I have two concerns. I have concerns of doing business with that educational center. That's one concern I have, especially with the future of it, and some of the situations that are taking place there. I mean, this particular company made national news. National news, not in a positive way. So I'm very cautious about having us being associated with that, one of our students. And obviously we want the best. And then when I take a look at the cost, and then I look at the description, when I take a look at the cost and the description, it just didn't gel. Thank you, Madam Superintendent.
Thank you. Assistant Superintendent Murphy.
If I might be able to answer some of your concerns, we certainly share your concern about the Judge Rottenberg Center. They are the only facility that uses aversive therapy. It is not the preferred method to work with children. However, with this particular student, this is a student who has multiple needs, significant cognitive and behavioral needs. This is a child who we had been involved in legal proceedings. And another piece of information for you is this is the only facility in the state that would accept this student. And this is the facility that the parents have chosen. As part of our agreement within the IEP, we ask for regular updates. We do observations of the program. So we do share your concern, but it's a combination of the student's significant needs, being the only facility in the Commonwealth that will accept the student. The student also has a one-to-one para with the child at all times, and that's the additional cost. So we are very much aware of the significant amount of money that we are required to provide for the services for this one particular child, but this is not a child that we can service within our public schools, and it is also a child that we have been unable to locate another facility within Massachusetts that would accept the child.
Thank you. Mr. Leary and then Mr. Conway.
That changes a lot of the focus of what I was going to ask, but I guess ultimately, just from a time frame to investigate it further, do we have to vote on this tonight, or can we vote on this in August? I mean, I guess that's the first question. As far as being investigated by, I missed the first part of what my colleague said. I'm not sure who they're being investigated by, the Senate, the Attorney General. I mean, if there's something that's ongoing, we probably should get additional information. Although in light of what you're saying, it's the only facility in the state that would actually accept the child. It's changes a lot of my thought process, but I would like to find out more about what this facility is, if there is an ongoing investigation. I guess the question I put to you, to the chair, if there's an issue, could we withdraw the student? I know we have an IEP. Is that within the language to withdraw the student if there are issues? Or if the facility closes down, what would we do at that point in time? Again, I apologize. It is a lot of money, but there's a couple of these that are of significant cost, that are of equal value. But I guess a little more clarification and a question, do we need to vote on it tonight if we can't get that information tonight? Or is it something that needs to be done today? Thank you.
Madam Superintendent?
I am not, usually when these come up, it's in a timely fashion. We're usually asked to vote on it because it's upcoming. I don't know if we can vote on a portion of it, so you can have a bridge kind of fund to look into the piece. I'm not sure if this is a September rollover. I'm not sure if Ms. Murphy knows more about this, but yeah, I don't have any more information about it.
I can say that in terms of the investigation, they are looking at the practice of using aversive therapy. And what that is, as an example for students who are spitting, they'll maybe put hot Tabasco sauce on their tongue. It's not the preferred method to work with the child to decrease that inappropriate behavior. So that's what the investigation is. And there's also been some allegations of doing some shock therapy as well at the facility, which is very controversial. So that's the investigation part of it. In terms of this particular student, there were legal proceedings in terms of going before the Bureau of Special Education Appeals, that we brought this case before the Bureau of Special Education Appeals. We were not comfortable with this placement for the child. However, where it was the only placement for the child, and we were strongly encouraged by the hearing officer to settle this case, we had no choice because that's really where the parent wanted the child to be.
And
Follow-up, so what you're saying basically is we didn't initially want to do this. Not only did we not want to, I guess what I'm reading between what you're saying is basically we didn't want to do it. We pursued the legal action within the great Commonwealth of Massachusetts in their board, and we're basically told, this is what you're going to do or I'm going to order, is what you're saying. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, we know that we cannot service this child in the public schools. We know that we do not have the services and the capacity to provide what this child needs. And so the team absolutely made a recommendation that this child be serviced in an out-of-district placement, one that had the intensive services that the child needs. And we looked extensively at lots of programs within Massachusetts, and he was not accepted at any of those programs. So in addition to this child being at the Judge Rottenberg Center, there is also a one-to-one paraprofessional with the child.
Thank you. Mr. Conway and then Ms. Martin.
Yeah, just very briefly on it, I think that obviously we know that it's an out-of-district situation here, that we cannot service certain students. And needless to say, this happens to be one of those students that fall into that category. My concern going forward is, and you just, Assistant Superintendent Murphy, you just magnified the situation, as far as I'm concerned, by saying that it's the only facility in the state that would take them. Well, if we're running it, if this particular company is running into a problem right now and they're being investigated, and I think they were investigated, it came to the surface not because of something was put on hot pepper under a tongue. There was obviously because of the shock therapy, needless to say. But taking that into consideration, if something takes place, and they know that they've had over 15 lawsuits last year, in this facility. And there's another major one going on right now that I think has brought the attention of the national level. If something happens to this company, where do we go with this particular student? And I'm glad you brought that up, because there's nobody that is willing to take this student. So the bottom line is we're going to have potentially a plan, an alternative plan on what to do. So we're going to have to find something. And again, when you say that the student has a one-on-one para, I understand that. I mean, with $368,000, we could have a whole classroom of paras working with them. But again, those are just my concerns, and I'd just like to, if at all possible, if we could take a look at that and see if we could, again, bring that team together. Are there any alternatives? What happens if this facility does close? What do we do with that student? These, I think, are questions that need to be addressed. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Martin and then Mr. Gignac.
Thank you very much. I know that our IEPs, well, certainly in general, and I'm particularly sure in an extreme case like this, are decidedly prescriptive. I mean, that's the whole point. Could you just, not getting into specifics, but to address the euphemism of aversive therapy, has that been prescribed as part of this child's IEP?
We have specifically written into the IEP that this child there'd be no participation with aversive therapy.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Mr. Gignac.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Assistant Superintendent Murphy, I'm not sure if you'll know this off the top of your head, but how often do we use this facility? Or
this is the only student at this facility, and it is the only student that we have had at this facility. I think when I started in special education administration back in the 80s, I believe we had, yes, one student at the time. We have not had another student until this child here. It was very clear to all of us that this was not a facility that we found to be in line with what our educational philosophy is.
okay, thank you.
And finally, to Mr. Leary's question about the necessity of a vote tonight.
That I think I would refer to the deputy superintendent in terms of the finance piece.
Mr. Lang.
Thank you. I'm not particularly aware of the circumstances surrounding this particular placement or anything like that. With regard to the contract, I believe, Ms. Murphy, it is a continuation of a placement? This isn't a brand-new placement, correct?
This is a continuation of his placement.
Right. We had a contract in place for this. This isn't a school year placement, it's a year-round placement. So he's there and receiving services now. I do think it'd be in the best interest of the committee to approve the contract tonight. I'd have no problem providing further information at the next meeting or subsequent meetings, but where it was a decision in place for this placement, I think you're better off actually having a contract in place for the services as soon as possible. I wouldn't delay another month.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Motion to approve by Ms. Martin, seconded by Ms. Ross-Sikowicz. Roll call, please.
Ms. Ross-Sikowicz?
Yes.
Ms. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Conway?
Yes.
Mr. Gignac?
Yes.
Mr. Leary?
Yes.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
Mayor Murphy?
Yes.
7 yeas, approved.
Thank you. Next, we have memorials. Rose M. Pilato, mother of the Stocklosa Middle School parent liaison, Jackie Dolan. Walter T. Bennett, retired McAuliffe School head custodian and husband of retired Pine School clerk Margaret Bennett. Louis D. Sarcina, uncle of the superintendent Jean M. Franco. Phyllis Marie Erbland, mother of Robin Erbland, Stocklosa Middle School special education teacher. George Bellarose, father-in-law of Stocklosa Middle School teacher Heather Bellarose. Margaret Brady, retired teacher and principal. Leo Kutu, brother of Riley School teacher Amy Gillis. And lastly, James Mullen of the Highlands, a Lowell High School graduate. If you'd please rise in a moment of silence and darken chambers. May they rest in peace. Next, we have motions. First motion by James Leary, requests the superintendent, in conjunction with the Greater Lowell Technical High School, look into the feasibility of creating a Lowell Public Schools vocational technical alternative school. Seconded by Ms. Ross-Sikowicz. Mr. Leary.
Thank you. Just quickly, we've had a lot of discussion over the past few years where folks from the city of Lowell are not fortunate enough to get into the Greater Lowell Technical School, even though that's their first choice. And we know that meeting their needs, when we're looking at the academics of what we do at Lowell High School, not are always meeting what their expectations might be. What I think we need to start doing is looking into an area either in conjunction with the Greater Lowell Technical High School or on our own, looking for some appropriate alternative or vocational settings. I didn't want to put specifics into terms of what that would actually look like. I think that could run the gamut from something as simple as having a second shift over at the Greater Lowell Technical High School in carpentry or what have you, or more specific to doing similar what maybe Middlesex Community College does in terms of gearing up students specifically for employment within particular jobs that are in the Greater Lowell area. I realize that it could be a challenge and it'll take some time. We won't be getting this done anytime soon, probably next year or even maybe in 2 years, but I think it's something that we need to start taking a look at in terms of what our students' needs are and looking with Greater Lowell to see if there is a potential partnership. If there isn't, potentially if there is a need, we might do it on our own. Again, it's not going to be an easy project, but I think it's a worthwhile one. Thank you.
Thank you. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Next motion of the night by Robert Gignac, requests the superintendent develop a report of all the cash handling policies and procedures currently in place district-wide. Seconded by Ms. Ross-Sikowicz. Mr. Gignac.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think this motion speaks for itself. I just want to take a look at what we currently have in place to ensure that we're doing our job as a committee to strengthen the policies and make sure that there is no room for theft or anything of that nature. Thank you.
Thank you. Any discussion on this motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Next we have under subcommittees, Lowell High School Subcommittee approval of the minutes of the meeting of Thursday, May 31st, 2012. Mr. Conway?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The members present were myself, also Robert Gignac, and the other school committee members present, Connie Martin, Kim Scott, and Jim Leary from Central Office, Gene Franco, Superintendent, Claire Abrams, Assistant Superintendent, and others that were present, Mr. Ed Rosmerick, the headmaster, and Dr. Wendy Jack, the curriculum coordinator. Director. The agenda for this subcommittee meeting included the STEAM update, number 1, 2, quarterly assessment as they relate to the common syllabi, and also the SAT, continue the discussion to bring forward more ideas and strategies in the programs that help increase the scores on the SAT exams. STEM update on a motion, request the superintendent to review to make recommendation changes to improve the academy programs at Lowell High School. The recommendations would include developing a rigorous STEAM academic program through the existing Lowell High School infrastructure, flexible scheduling, more appropriate class sizes, ensuring student achievement, and developing pathways to increase the numbers of students in engineering and science programs as required by Race to the Top and Mass Core. Dr. Wendy Jack gave the report, and she talked about the small Communities Learning Grant, which was a key factor in the funding of the Lowell High School academies. She also talked about the ending of the grant in 2011. The high school has had to look at some new approaches in order to for students to study specific subject areas to meet the state requirements. Another point that was brought up, time of the high school was discussing pathways and the students may choose to take. And by doing this, students study a discipline of their choice as well as to meet the requirements of the Mass Core. Dr. Jack also talked about a couple options for a STEAM pathway that students may choose. One pathway for college students, which was explained, and also another one for honors to try to make sure that all parties and all levels were taken care of academically. The second one was the quarterly assessment. The motion on that requests the superintendent refine the focus of common quarterly assessments at Lowell High School for implementation in the fall of 2012, so the assessment by course and level are consistently rigorous and access identical standards of the Massachusetts curriculum frameworks. Dr. Wendy Jack discussed the comprehensive review that was happening at the high school right now, and also talked about how the high school department heads and teachers, along with central office coordinators, have been working over the course of the year on the major curriculum review at the high school. Common syllabus was also adopted, and all disciplines have or will be completing curriculum maps for each course. Another point that was brought up was a result of the quarterly assessments will need to be updated to reflect the changes in the curriculum standards and levels for all courses. Excuse me, this will help the high school get ready actually for the 10-year review that will be coming up in the next couple years. The next point under that quarterly assessment, last point, superintendent also discussed the fact that students would be given the opportunity for multiple assessments, and specific plans for differentiations should be part of this process. Rubrics should be developed for assessments. And I'm sorry, the last point on that was Dr. Jack also mentioned that school-wide projects for all freshmen academy reflects reading the book of The Other, Westmore, which he went into great detail, which sounds like it's an incredible project that has taken place, and I think it was actually spawned by students out at the Voc. The next topic were the SAT updates, to ask the superintendent to develop strategies and our programs that would help increase SAT scores of Lowell High School students. I think one of the things that we talked about Dr. Jack talked about was how important writing was, especially being persuasive and developing arguments through writing essays. And I think, again, it certainly is we're talking about rhetoric courses, I think, something that's extremely important for the increase of SAT scores. Also, accurate place preparation classes that were offered both during the school year and during the summer, which Dr. Wendy Jack thought that was certainly something that was going to be extremely important, and talked about the free SAT program entitled Let's Get Ready. And again, I think that's extremely important also because of the fact that understanding how the test is actually given and some of the techniques and the procedures, I think can certainly make students feel at ease and I think can result in higher scores. And the last point under the SAT updates was the Summer Sprint program provides the needed preparation in college reading, basic writing, basic math, algebra, and study skills which build competence and confidence. And Lowell High School will be sending about 20 students to this program over the summer. And that was, I believe, the report. And we had a vote to authorize accept the report as a report of progress. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Entertain a motion to accept this report of progress. Mr. Gignac?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just one thing I wanted to mention about this meeting. I was happy to learn about the Let's Get Ready Summer SAT preparation course, and I know we have the headmaster here. I was wondering if he knew actually how many students are taking advantage of this course at this time.
Yeah, thank you. They have been meeting. They're about halfway through their summer course. They meet twice a week at the high school for, I think it's 3 hours a night. They're using our computer lab to get on and do research and actually register for their own SATs. It's been the directors, the site directors have been telling me the classes have been going very well. We're serving about, I think the number is between 40 and 50 students at this time, which is pretty close to what we projected. So it looks good. It looks like it's doing what we expected it would.
Good, thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the report? Entertain a motion to accept this report of progress by Mr. Gignac, seconded by Ms. Ross-Sikowicz. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Next, we have the Student Support Services Subcommittee. Report and approval of the minutes of the meeting of Thursday, June 21st. Ms. Ross-Sikowicz.
Thank you. Let's see. We had 3 school committee members present, myself, Committeeman Gignac, and Committeewoman Kim Scott. Also in attendance was Superintendent Jane Franco, Assistant Superintendent Ann Murphy, Lowell High School Headmaster Ed Rosmerick, LHS Discipline and Operations Specialist Roxanne Howe, and LHS Housemaster Maria Vehar, I think. So we actually had a pretty heavy agenda. There were some proposed changes to the student handbooks for the 2011 and 2012 student handbooks. They were presented by the LHS Discipline and Operations Specialist Roxanne Howe and Assistant Superintendent Ann Murphy. Most changes to the handbooks are not substantive in nature, but serve to clarify language and provide consistency between handbooks. Subcommittee members conducted a comprehensive review of the handbooks and recommended changes. The original proposed changes were printed in red lettering with additional changes recommended by the Student Support Services Subcommittee printed in green. So the LHS handbook contained 3 proposed policy changes and 1 proposed schedule change, which are number 1, cell phone use, which would allow for use in classroom for educational purposes under the direction of the classroom teacher and allow for cell phone use in the cafeteria. Also, perfect attendance designation. A student would be disqualified from receiving the perfect attendance designation if the cumulative total time of tardies or dismissals for any school year equals more than a half a day. Number 3, buyback. Students will not be allowed to buy back classes that were cut or skipped. Number 4 was a schedule change. A new bell schedule is proposed, which allows for the advisory period to be moved to after period 2. 2 outstanding issues are not reflected in the book, which are the payment plan for the lunch program and the Lowell High GPA issue. The language will be added to the handbooks once decisions are made by the school committee. Let's see. The second item was a policy relative to pregnant students. Assistant Superintendent Murphy presented policy JIE-R pertaining to pregnant students, which revised the current policy to comply with requirements of the Civil Rights Coordinated Program Review. The revised policy eliminates the mandate of physician approval prior to a student returning to school following the birth of a baby. This mandate is not required of other students with medical conditions and therefore constituted a civil rights violation. The third item pertained to the tutoring center. Assistant Superintendent Murphy presented a proposal from the Special Ed Department to establish a tutoring center at the Rogers School for students who are unable to attend school due to medical conditions. The plan would address the challenges of securing qualified tutors, securing tutors capable of tutoring in more than one subject, finding appropriate locations for tutoring, coordination between tutors in the school, and the financial costs. The proposal includes, number 1, establishing a tutoring center in the cafeteria of the Rogers School, open from 3 to 5 p.m., Monday through Thursday. Number 2, the center would be staffed by a highly qualified teacher in each of the main subject areas, ELA, math, science, social studies, along with a special ed teacher. Number 3, a program coordinator would oversee the operation of the center along with all paperwork and compliance. Number 4, a social worker will provide therapeutic support as needed and provide contact with doctors regarding the student's progress. Number 5, the coordination between the center and school staff would be systematic and consistent. And number 6, the cost of the center would be considerably less than the cost of the current model. Students whose medical conditions prevent them from leaving their home will continue to receive tutoring in their home. So that's it.
Thank you. So we have 3 motions then to entertain for the full committee. The first would be the changes to the student handbooks. Motion by Ms. Martin, or on the motion? Discussion. Okay, move for approval by Ms. Martin, seconded by Ms. Scott. On the motion, Ms. Martin.
Thank you very much. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to attend this meeting, so I hope my colleagues will forgive me if I ask a couple questions. Could I just, I've heard some information about the schedule change. This doesn't seem to reflect that, so I'm not sure. What exactly is the change? Is it that we're eliminating an advisory committee or we're moving it to second period? So I'm just not sure what that is. If someone could clarify that for me.
Madam Superintendent.
I'm going to ask Mr. Headmaster on the right level, but I believe that the last recommendation was to have advisory once a week, and that would be second period, and so that did not have that first period lateness issue that we've had over time. But I will ask Headmaster Rosemaric to clarify.
I can explain a little bit of the thinking that went into this and the genesis of how we got to where we are. Currently, with advisory first thing in the day, too many people consider it a grace period to come. I've actually heard that phrase. You know, it's a grace period to get to school by 8:15, which is when advisory is over. And despite everything we try to do to make sure it's 7:55, 7:55, 7:55, they're rolling in late. So we don't want to go with that. We've talked about changing the structure of advisory and what we do with the time, and that becomes cumbersome in working out negotiations with the union because it's looked at as an additional teaching preparation. So changing the structure of it is problematic, so we're looking at changing the time. The first thinking was, okay, let's take the same time structure, just move it to between periods 2 and 3 or between periods 3 and 4. Or 1 and 2, you know, somewhere later in the morning. So the kids come into school, and at 7:55, you go to first period class, and boom, class is starting. We ran into a problem with scheduling that way if we were to go every single day, because we have double block science labs every period of the day. 1 and 2, 2 and 3, 3 and 4, 4 and 5. Everywhere through the day, there are these double labs. It wouldn't make sense to have kids show up to class, set up your lab, 45 minutes in, the bell rings, you go to advisory, then you come back and start over again. So we had to try to find some middle ground that reached everything we were trying to get. And this idea of going with a once-a-week advisory seemed the best. There are a lot of schools that do once-a-week advisory, making it, our hope is that by spotlighting it that way, it will put more importance on it. It won't become a routine, everyday thing. It's something that when you're there for a purpose, you're there for a reason. Hey, everybody, this is advisory day. We're going to go do something in our advisory class. By putting it once a week, the science teachers will have one of those double blocks interrupted, but they'll know it. And they'll know that this day of the week, it's going to be advisory day. Don't schedule your lab that day. The double block still exists, but the double block, even now, every single day is not a lab every single time that they have that class. So science teachers, by knowing it up front, will just be able to schedule that on advisory day, that's not the day you have your lab. So splitting, go away, come back again, we avoid that problem. So we're looking at this as the best solution. It's going to get kids in the building at 7:55. We'll have a warning bell at 7:50, and then class starts at 7:55. They're going to go through their classes. What we've done with the structure is we've taken that 20 minutes that was advisory, and on the other 4 days of the week, we've just split that 20 minutes into the other class periods. And so the school day stays the same, 7:55 to 2:30. We're not asking extra time of anybody. We're putting a few minutes back to each of the other class periods. On the one day that is advisory day, we will come in and classes will be as long as they currently are now. So we're not going to short anything from the current schedule, but they'll be shorter than the other days of the new schedule, and then we'll have that 20-minute advisory period in the middle of the morning. They'll go to advisory. We're hopeful that we can use the time, guidance counselors and housemasters can still use the time to go meet with their students. We're hopeful, we have a curriculum of advisory that was developed years back. We're going to try to roll out pieces of that. And again, like I said, by reducing the number of times this meets, we're hoping to increase, sort of concentrate the importance of it. And we'll be able to make better use of the time that we are using. That's the idea.
Ms. Martin.
And again, I apologize, because just a few small questions. So it's a 20-minute period. What's our current lunch period now?
25 minutes.
Okay. So I'm just thinking, and again, this is based on past experience, and I know what our scheduling is like. I know our scheduling is incredibly challenging. But I know in the past, those two things had been tied together, that there was kind of the advisory committee tied with then lunch, so that you had, during those periods, you weren't kind of having the same problems with the block scheduling because everyone was shifting at the same times, and you were either at lunch or at your advisory period. It's one idea. I think one of my concerns is that the advisory period was meant to do something, was meant to accomplish something. It hasn't at this point, and that's, a difficult challenge. And I don't know if moving it to a different point in the day will somehow change teachers' opinion of it. I doubt it will. They're looking at it as something extra or as something, some kind of punishment, I'm not sure. I don't think moving it to second period is really going to change that attitude. So, and maybe reducing it to 1 day a week, I don't know. My concern is that it didn't work, and we're not necessarily addressing the reasons why it didn't work. We're just kind of giving up on it and moving it to a different time of day and limiting it and hoping that, I guess, that will make it more successful. I mean, the reality is it would be hard to be less successful. I mean, and that's just the reality. And I don't think it's any individual's fault or anything like that. It was just in terms of the rollout and the way that it's been kind of accepted in the school community has certainly been shaky at best. So I just have concerns. I mean, I'll accept the recommendations of the administration, but it seems like we're torturing our schedule to accommodate something that perhaps could have been, better addressed directly with our staff throughout the high school. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Gignac and then Mr. Conway.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Not too long ago, I was a student at the high school, and during advisory period, we would actually watch the announcements on the television. And when are these students going to receive their daily announcements?
Well, we're going to try to get announcements. We're not going to be doing that. I'm not sure how effective that's been. The television show is intermittent. It runs when the TV production class has one ready to go. So it's not a regular daily news kind of a broadcast. I don't know if it was in the past. It hasn't been the last 2 years. We do have morning announcements that we read over the PA system, and anecdotally, I hear from an awful lot of students that they don't hear them. The loudspeakers just don't come through. It's some hear them, some don't. It's not the most effective way to get it out. What we're going to try to do this year is, I've already done a survey of the building with where we have bulletin boards, and I want to make much better use of that for getting news out. We're going to use boards for individual class officers and projects that are going on. Junior class is doing this, senior class is doing that. By each house office, we'll be posting the most current news, the things that students really need to know. If there's anything that must be known, that we really need to get the word out, we've increased the first period class by a few extra minutes. The 20 minutes that was advisory is going spread out across the day, but a few extra minutes to first period. That gives the first period teacher a couple extra minutes to take the daily attendance, and if we need to interrupt class to make some announcements, we're going to try to cut back so we're not repeating announcements daily, the same thing you heard yesterday and the day before, but the few announcements that we have to get out, we will be able to make announcements through first period. So announcements, bulletin boards, class notes, we're going to do the best we can to get the word out that way, and I think it's going to work probably better than it has.
Okay. So I just don't, I think if bulletin boards worked like they may have done a long time ago, I think if bulletin boards worked in the 60s and 70s, then they never would have resorted to the PA system or the television screen. So I understand that kids can't hear and there's stuff like that, but how often, the hallways are constant, they're always filled with students. Who's going to have time to go look at a bulletin board when they have 4,000 kids walking by them? I just think that announcements is something, you might not think it's as important as I do, but sometimes you need to get a message across, and you shouldn't be interrupting an academic course to do that in the first period. And once a week in the advisory that you have structured I don't think it's sufficient. I don't know how my colleagues feel, but just a thought. Thank you.
Mr. Conway,
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
how do you feel?
A little hot right now. I'd like to ask a couple question to the superintendent. How was our year figured out? Is it by the minutes, the hours, or is it by the day?
It is by the hours.
It's by the hours. Okay. So at the high school, we're already meeting our requirement by the state. Is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Conway.
Okay. I think that when I was listening to my colleague, Ms. Martin, I think she hit it right on the head, too, and that is, it seems as though we're kind of camouflaging it a little bit. You know, back a number of years ago, they decided to change the day and start school a little bit later, because all the studies showed that it was the best way to go, and it was going to be the most effective. And I think that with that age group, it didn't really matter what day, what time it started, they were still going to be coming in late. I think we all know that. And what's happening is that we're seeing that situation right now, that kids are coming in late. And I agree with my colleague, Mr. Gignac, when you talk about an advisory. I'm a little confused about just having it once a week and then tacking on that time, that 15 minutes, to the rest of the day. And I'll be quite frank with you, the whole idea of getting out of school at 2:30 versus a 2:15, you know, many of our students that participate in sports, extracurricular activities, work, and so forth, they're at a little bit of a disadvantage, and I certainly saw that firsthand. I mean, I'd almost rather see, if you were going to cut that 15 minutes off, then shorten the day to the 2:15 perhaps, or even take a look at that. That's why I was wondering whether we have enough of minutes or hours in the year to, to satisfy the state requirements. I think the whole idea of only having that advisory once a week, I just don't, to me, that just doesn't make a lot of sense. I mean, and I'm sure that you people have looked at it and gone over it 100 times, and maybe that is the best way, and I'm certainly gonna go by your recommendation, but I certainly think that, you know, with any kind of a change that takes place, we need to have some type of follow-up study or follow-up, and to see if it is effective or not. If it's not effective, let's go back. I mean, that's all right. I mean, if a mistake is made, that's not a problem. We'll go back and try something different. Because again, it's a challenging age group that we're dealing with, and I think we need some flexibility. But if you think that this might be the best way, then so be it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Rosemaric and then Mr. Leary.
Well, I think looking at this again sometime down the road, say the end of the first quarter, end of the first semester, I think makes an awful lot of sense. We do, whenever we put something in place, we continue to review and consider how things are, was it the right change? This recommendation is an effort to correct the problem. There's a problem. Advisory is not working the way it is. And too many people are coming in late. That tardy number is extremely high. This is an effort to address that head on. The reason for the lateness is an advisory class that isn't working right. We're trying to do things that I think will make the advisory work better and address the tardiness, two things at the same time. As I said, with the once a week, there are I don't have data in front of me, but there are schools that do advisory once a week. There are schools that do advisory once a month. There are schools that don't do it at all. It is sort of the wave of the future. NEASC strongly recommends that schools set up some formal system of a kind of a guide or a mentor who's not a guidance counselor, so that students have someone to work with. That's the origin of these advisory sessions. It's not meant to be another class. It's meant to be someone in the building who the student recognizes as someone they can talk to. There's no format that comes out of NEASC. There's no format from the Department of Ed that tells us how often is that supposed to happen. There's no curriculum. There's no statewide curriculum or expectation for what happens during advisory time. It's been convenient to us to be able to use the time to make announcements, but that's not really what it's supposed to be. It's not a homeroom. It's not supposed to be announcement time. So yeah, we are perhaps losing that, but I think we can focus on getting the announcements out in more effective ways around the building anyway. I think we're already, the announcements are daily updated on the website. We have student groups that are working on creating Facebook pages for information. So we're doing a lot more things to try to get the word out and try to get information out to people. This was an effort to try to correct a problem. It may not be the best way to go about it. We're trying to, I'm open to suggestions. Right now, this was the one that seemed like it was the best, that keeps some structure of what we had. Students will still have a mentor in place. They will still have an advisor. They'll still have that advisory period, but it won't be the first thing of the day, so very quickly we attack that idea of the 20-minute grace period to be late to school. So that's the idea we came up with.
Thank you. Mr. Leary? Any further discussion? Yeah. Roll call, please.
Ms. Rostikowicz?
Yes.
Ms. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Conway?
Yes.
Mr. Gignac?
Yes.
Mr. Leary?
Yes.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
Mayor Murphy?
Yes.
7 yeas, approved.
Thank you. Next, we would entertain a motion on the policy relative to pregnant students. Ms. Rostikowicz? So moved. Seconded by Mr. Leary. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Ms. Rostikowicz?
Yes.
Ms. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Conway?
Yes.
Mr. Gignac?
Yes.
Mr. Leary?
Yes.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
Mayor Murphy?
Yes.
7 yeas, approved.
And finally, we have the motion regarding the tutoring center. Move to approve by Mr. Gignac, seconded by Mr. Conway. Any discussion? Ms. Martin?
Thank you very much. Can I just ask, and I'm not sure who would be the appropriate person to answer, but I know it mentions in here that we'll be seeing savings based on this new model. Where would those savings be coming from? I mean, we have the same staff in place, so I'm just curious about where the savings would come from.
I'm going to begin, but I'm going to ask my fine detail if Ms. Murphy has to add. So in the world of student support services, we always have to have extra tutoring for students who are out of school, whether it be medically involved or for a number of reasons. And so historically, you've always had one tutor assigned to each child for a certain amount of hours. 4 hours has been that designated time over the last years. So the idea of the Office of Student Services is to combine the tutoring so you can offer courses, so that one tutor could take 2, 3, 4 students, depending on offering English. Let's pretend one particular day, have that students come and attend. So the savings would be incurred when you start to strategically plan when they're going to come for instruction. So you'll have one, instead of having 4 tutors, 4 kids, one tutor would then take those 4 children, and then you could offer classes to meet the needs of the young people in a better way. So that's the idea behind the tutoring center. So instead of one teacher having one child, they would have a little cohort. And that's how the funding would be saved. And also, it had been run at the library. So, coming, there'd be lots of times when kids didn't show up, they'd get downtown. So this would be right at the Rogers School, in the cafeteria, and, drop off and whatnot. So the idea behind it was consolidating the program to need. And that's where the savings would be incurred. So it would be run at one session over, more kids can be in a group. The group would be run, the grades could go back and forth to the high school through the person, and there would be someone overseeing it as a more of a program than kind of having to take stock of it between the Office of Student Services and the high school, who's always given the assignment. So it was more concerted effort. That was the detail behind it.
So this would be just for the high school? Just for high school students?
No, it
Okay.
would have other children, correct, Ms. Murphy? Yes. Yeah.
If I could, I mean, the majority of our students who are out on medical leave do come out of the high school or the middle school. We have some students at the elementary level who have medical needs that would not be part of this tutoring center. Any child who cannot leave their home, certainly a child who has a broken leg, a child who is undergoing any type of treatment, we would still provide the tutoring in the home for that child. But the vast number of our students who are out on a medical leave, if you will, the doctor saying that they cannot come to school, a significant number are due to psychiatric issues. And what we have seen is that kids are out for a very long time. And tutoring is not a substitute for a classroom, and it's not a good, solid educational program for a child. So we really looked at how do we get our kids back into school. One of our biggest challenges was, especially at the high school level, if a child, a student is taking a high honors algebra 2 class, a chemistry class, an advanced English class, finding one person that has the capacity to tutor in all of those high-level areas was extremely challenging for us. And so the thinking behind this was that we would have the center open for 4 days, and we would make sure that we had an English, a math, a social studies, and a science teacher, someone who had the content knowledge to be able to tutor the students in those advanced classes. It would also be staffed with a social worker and a coordinator. They could be working with the medical doctors, the psychiatrists, to be the liaison to get those kids back into school as quickly as we can, and to be the liaison with the guidance counselors to get the work over to the school.
Just to wrap up, thank you very much for the explanation. And again, had I been there at the subcommittee, I would have heard it then. So I apologize for that. I think it's an interesting concept. I didn't hear you mention the true behavioral issues. A number of students who are, number of our students who are getting tutoring are because of behavioral issues.
The students who are put on long-term suspension, who have expulsion hearings, would not be part of this group. We would not bring them. We're really looking to pilot this for next year to see how successful it's going to be in terms of getting kids back into school, giving students really good, strong academic support. And as Superintendent Franco said, a lot of our tutoring happens at the library, and we have kids who don't show. We're constantly chasing kids down, so we're hoping this is a way to pull it together a little bit better. So for next year, we would not be looking at including the students who are on long-term suspension due to an expulsion hearing.
Okay. I think it's an interesting concept. I mean, it really seems like we're building another alternative option as opposed to maybe an alternative school, and I think that's a great idea. And I think anything we can do to help students who are struggling with issues outside of the classroom, but to be able to maintain their progress so they don't, the real fear is that a student may be in a difficult situation and can get so far behind that suddenly school isn't even an option. And if we can kind of keep them moving forward, I think that we have a far better chance of being able to welcome them back into a traditional school community and to resume their studies. So I think it's an interesting concept. I think it would be interesting maybe so we'll be implementing this in September?
That's what we would like to do.
Okay. It'd be great to get again, like our other decisions tonight, it would be great at the 6-month mark maybe to be able to see how many students have gone through this, if we've been able to reincorporate them into the school community. Because I think it could be an interesting model to see how we might be able to better serve these students. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Ross-Sikowicz.
I'd just also like to note, Assistant Superintendent Murphy had included in our packet the cost savings. So the model as it currently exists costs $6,000 a week. So the proposed tutoring center would cost us $1,720 a week. So that's a significant savings, which goes right back into the classroom. So thank you for bringing that forward.
Thank you. So entertain a motion then by Mr. Leary, seconded by Ms. Ross-Sikowicz. Roll call, please.
Ms. Ross-Sikowicz?
Yes.
Ms. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Conway?
Yes.
Mr. Gignac?
Yes.
Mr. Leary?
Yes.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
Mayor Murphy?
Yes.
6 yeas, approved.
Thank you. Next, we have reports of the superintendent. Excuse me. Entertain a motion to accept his report of progress by Mr. Gignac, seconded by Mr. Conway. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Next, we have reports of the superintendent. The first report, Middlesex Community College sponsored Grade Point Average Summit and request for GPA changes at Lowell High School. Madam Superintendent.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Murphy. Earlier, last month, I met with Middlesex Community College. We had the opportunity to meet with Dr. Ms. Colleen Cox, who ran this format for us. We were invited to the Nesmith House. It was a lovely morning. We had Lowell High School counselors attend with us, also the headmaster, as well as others from the high school, Dr. Jack. And we talked about issues of concern that you had brought forward in our last meetings of the Lowell High Subcommittee meeting, one of which being what's really happening in the world of GPA, what's going on, and you also asked me to look into, when we had people from other colleges, how did Lowell students fare as far as how do we look on paper, how would we look acceptance-wise. So at that particular meeting, we were joined by a admissions officer from UMass Lowell, as well as an admissions officer from Salem State College. At that particular point, they talked about the fact that they have not used high school GPAs for more than 5 years. That what they do is when a student comes in and they apply for a job, they apply for admission to college, they recreate their own program of studies. So they put in all the courses because colleges, high schools count courses differently and weight them differently. So the colleges themselves have made their own way of taking the transcripts and putting the information into a kind of a grid. And so they do not use an actual class rank or a high school GPA. They create their own. They said the most important documentation when they come forward are those transcripts that they recreate, as well as SAT scores. They also noted to everybody that children, young people think that they don't have to be on their toes until the end of senior years, and that's not correct. Technology is such that they can be checking those transcripts right up to the end of the year. And so when we talked about the GPA, they said that schools do all kinds of things, but to have that specific class rank is not something that's important for entry into college by any means in those two institutions. And those were the only two that were present that particular day. Additionally, we did go on to ask how our young people fared when they came into the view of these two institutions. And they said that the guidance counselors have wonderful relationships with these institutions, that our children feel very well, that the documentation is very well presented, and that things are received in a timely fashion. So on paper, our young people look very good in these two institutions because that was part of our conversation. So as a result, that led me to go back to the recommendation that the headmaster made in the meeting well back in, I think it was a Lowell High Subcommittee meeting in May. And so that I, at this point, would recommend the recommendation of the headmaster to change the GPA process to be not as exact, that it would have that range as is recommended in the recommendations that have been made from Lowell High School. So that range piece instead of the exact number, and I believe that many schools, as a matter of fact, in the report, it's noted how many schools have gotten away from this over time. So that's we had that one item that was not voted on the last time, and at that particular time, I believe Mr. Leary requested we wait until the mayor was back so we could do that vote. So that would be my recommendation at this particular time.
Thank you. Anyone on the report? Mr. Conway?
Thank you. Mr. Mayor. I want to thank the superintendent for working with Middlesex Community College in this summit. And I also want to thank publicly Colleen Cox and Molly Sheehy for putting this together. I truly appreciate that on short notice. I think when this was first brought up by my colleague back a few weeks ago, I certainly did not have enough of information available. And I've been involved with education all my life, but I could not honestly say that it was right or was wrong. I certainly, some people have said it's a no-brainer. Well, I'm sorry, I didn't quite figure it out. And I'm not alone in that. There are a number of college administrators that are still questioning it. And yes, there are many colleges that have gone in that direction of getting rid of a class rank for a number of different reasons. And, just because something has been in existence for decades, it doesn't necessarily mean it's the only way or the best way and we can't improve on it. And this might be a perfect example. I don't know. But there certainly is enough evidence that, we should perhaps go forward on this particular situation. And do I totally feel comfortable with it? No, not really. But, again, I thank you for sitting down with individuals that do it for a living, and guidance counselors and college admissions people. And there was a little bit more of this is a very important thing. It really is, to make that move. I think that there's probably nobody in this room that remembers back, well, maybe one person or two might remember back to the modern math that was introduced, I believe, into the 70s by a professor, a priest down at Boston College, and saying that this was the wave of the future with mathematics. And obviously people of great importance and great stature jumped on that bandwagon. But when people took a look at it and put it into existence, they found it wasn't necessarily the best way to go. So I certainly hope that this is something a little bit different. What I would like to do is, and I would vote for it tonight, but what I would like to do is ask the superintendent and ask the headmaster and his officials, his staff over there at the high school, that we need to have some type of a follow-up. If we're going to make a move of this type of magnitude, there needs to be a follow-up. And let's see how many more students perhaps get into four-year colleges. And I think one of the goals which was talked about is getting into more prestigious colleges. Let's see if we can get, and it's not going to be done perhaps in a one-year study, but we can get an idea on it. I think we need probably 3 years in order to get a good picture of what direction it's going in. But let's see how many students, whether the total number has increased for four-year colleges, and also whether we've had increases in in the Ivy Leagues or the NESCAC League or the Patriot League, prestigious type of leagues, and see if there is that increase. And if there is, then that's fine. If not, then maybe we have to revisit it down the road. But again, I thank you for putting that conference together and coming back with that report, Madam Superintendent.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the report? Mr. Leary.
Thank you. I want to thank you too, Madam Superintendent. And I want to thank UMass Lowell, Middlesex Community College, and Salem State University for partaking in that, as well as our staff. It's real important to note that the recommendations and the changes don't do a heck of a lot of difference than what we're doing now, but make the number larger. So if you were the valedictorian last year, and we had the GPA format, you would still be the valedictorian. And if you won a Carney Medal, you would still get your Carney Medal, because it's GPA. It's a longer number. And I know a lot of confusion's out there, and I have to bear with the patience of folks to help as this process goes forward, that they'll learn that and they'll realize that it's not a huge change as one might think it is. One comment I do agree with is that everything that we do should always be held up to standard and to see if it's improving. And if it's not improving, that we make a change. Life is fast. We have to look at high school not in terms of when we were in high school or when even our children were in high school. We have to look where the kids are going in the future. That's where it's important. And I appreciate the thoughtfulness of the folks who put their efforts in. And I think this change will be a positive change. And getting feedback at the end of this year as well as going forward, I think is imperative, not only in GPA, but in everything that we do. If something isn't working, then we need to change it. So again, I want to thank University of Massachusetts, Lowell for participating, Middlesex Community College, the Salem State University, and our folks. Thank you very much. And thank you, Madam Superintendent, for putting the effort in. And thank you to the headmaster and his staff for putting their thoughts forward. Thank you very much.
And thank you, Mr. Leary. Any further discussion on the report? Motion to accept by Mr. Leary, seconded by Mr. Gignac. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. In my profound and abiding interest in this last report, I skipped over the Personnel Subcommittee, but I have remembered you, Ms. Martin.
Thank you very
This
much.
is for the report of the meeting of Wednesday, July 18th.
Absolutely. The Personnel Subcommittee did meet immediately prior to our meeting this evening. We will be presenting the written minutes at our next meeting, but it was a single topic meeting. We were simply talking about introducing the new instrument that we'll be using to do our annual evaluation of the superintendent. As I said at the meeting, it is a far more involved, I think, in terms of the instrument itself. It's certainly, more complicated, but I think it will offer us far more information and solid information for ourselves as a committee and for the superintendent as we move forward. So I do think it's a move in the right direction. It does mirror the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education's proposed evaluation, new evaluation for administrators as well as for teachers. So we are kind of moving from, I think, a fairly bare bones evaluation instrument into something that really does mirror the new standard in terms of how educators are evaluated at the highest of levels. So it was introduced to the subcommittee and to the full committee at that point. We have determined that we will have a personnel subcommittee meeting on August 21st. Thank you very much. And then at which point the full committee will be invited to attend the personnel subcommittee so that we can have a conversation with the superintendent to discuss the evaluation. And then the full evaluation will be presented to the community at our next full school committee meeting on August 15th. Close enough. And we'll be able to make that presentation at that point. So it will be an involved process. We've given members a month, really, to review this paperwork and then get it into the superintendent's confidential secretary so that she can compile it into one document that we'll be able to refer to. And I thank my committee members, my colleagues in advance for their willingness to participate in, again, this far more intensive process. And I do think that at the conclusion of this, we will see a much more comprehensive and useful process in terms of our evaluation of the superintendent. There you go. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Martin. Any discussion on the report? Entertain at this motion to accept as report of progress by Ms. Rossikwich, second by Mr. Leary. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted.
Do we,
Mr. Leary.
regarding, just to go back into the agenda, I don't know if we had a question, do we not have to take a roll call in order to make the GPA change? I don't know if that's procedure required, or, I don't know.
Madam Superintendent?
Or is that something that just by taking your recommendation and approving it, we made the change? I guess just for clarification.
There were two pieces to the GPA vote. Let's take a roll call just to make sure, but it is a change in process. We've done things a certain way, So it's not a policy change,
Okay.
so.
That's
so-
fine. I just want to make sure we're doing it correctly, that's all. That's fine with me.
So I
So
don't,
would you like a roll call?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's a big deal. I just,
We're
please,
here
may I have a
anyway, so
roll
we
call,
might as well
please?
do a
Thank
roll
you.
call.
Yes, I want a roll call.
Okay. Roll call and motion by Mr. Leary, second by Mr. Gignac, to approve the change of the GPA.
You're the
report.
best, Bear. Thank you.
No problem.
Ms. Rostikowicz?
Yes.
Ms. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Conway?
Yes.
Mr. Gignac?
Yes.
Mr. Leary?
Yes.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
Mayor Murphy?
Yes.
7 yeas approved.
Barely. So, moving on to reports of the superintendent. We have Lowell High School staffing realignment. Madam Superintendent.
yes, thank you. As at the last budget hearing on May 16th, when we presented the Finance Subcommittee results on the 22nd, there was one position for a special educator at Lowell High School. And because of the change in enrollment and other issues, this committee requested of me to direct the headmaster to look and see if there was some way that that one position could be internally absorbed at the high school, because we did not have a direct number of class size. I checked recently, and they're still getting that schedule together at this particular point. They don't have all the class size at this point. They'll be ready probably by August 1st. Around there, to send home to young people. So at that particular point, the headmaster went and looked into existing positions that had not been filled, positions that could be absorbed. And the recommendation of the headmaster's team was to absorb one fine arts position. And so that was the recommendation, that could be, the enrollment in that particular department would not such that could not be changed. And so that's the recommendation, to take away that position and then repost for a special educator. So that's the recommendation of the high school.
Ms. Martin.
The overall population at the high school, what's been the drop that we're anticipating from last school year to this school year in September?
I'll ask Mr. Rosemaric.
How many fewer students will we have this coming September than we did last year? More than a couple? More than a couple. More than 100? Okay, and that's certainly understandable. And I'm going on my own memory and history. It's significant. Over the last few, couple years, we've seen the numbers go down. I believe, and I don't mean to speak for my colleague, but the idea during our conversation around this position was that there was a significant drop in the number of students, that there was some pretty dramatic anomalies in terms of class size, and that we saw that there could be the potential to eliminate one position, one teaching position, and really not even eliminate it, just shift it to special education. That there should be the flexibility within that, within the staffing at the high school to be able to do that. I will quite honestly have grave concerns about eliminating a position in the fine arts department. I think if we make a comparison between the number of teachers that we have compare the number of students and the number of teachers in the English language arts versus the mathematics versus all the other areas, I am going to go out on a limb and say that our fine arts department has the smallest number of staff. It has been an area that has been depleted over the course of time. A necessary evil. It is. I've been here for those decisions. They have not been easy, and I have not been. I have recognized the loss that they have represented. But I think at a time now when we have some flexibility in terms of our staffing, to make the recommendation to eliminate an arts position, I just think it's inappropriate. And if this is the recommendation of Lowell High School and it is supported by the superintendent, it is your place to do that. I think it is an unfortunate choice And I think moving forward, it will be difficult. I would not be able to support it at this time, but it would be the will of the committee and the judgment of the administration.
Mr. Leary and then Mr. Gignac.
And just quickly, I support what Ms. Martin just stated. I think the issue here really is we didn't really have a lot of good class size information. And to this date, we really don't have solid class size information. We're going to need to do that, I guess, in September and October as we prepare the budget for the end of the year. The inference here was not to add a new teaching position. That was the inference. There was a solid drop. I thought the number was in the realm of like 500 students. I may be incorrect with that. I apologize. I think at this point we need to go back to the drawing board and take a look at this again. I think the class sizes, when we do the budget, it was frustrating not having a good number for that. Again, we didn't want to go into the budget and start taking off positions. So what we said really as an issue, we're not going to add a teaching position. Just think for a minute when we're looking at for first grade class sizes coming in. We had a huge kindergarten class size. You go over to Pawtucketville Memorial, they had gigantic class sizes for kindergarten that are rolling over into first grade. We can't put students into Pawtucketville Memorial. We had a whole paper article regarding parents who didn't like those decisions because we don't have enough space and teachers for first grade because the class sizes are too big. Yet the enrollment at the high school seems to be trending downward. Now granted, that may change in 2 or 3 years. This isn't like a static environment. So, in fairness, not to decimate the high school, because it is our flagship and it's a very important place for students to go to, we didn't start looking at what are your class sizes, how many English teachers do you really need, and then delay that further into July and August. So we felt a fair compromise as we went forward is we're not going to add any teachers. Again, I apologize, I don't know the number of students being diminished, but Ms. Martin, I think, really hit it on the head. I mean, this is something that, an area where we've already pretty inadequate. Again, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gignac.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree 100% with what Ms. Martin and Mr. Leary had just mentioned. I did want to clarify one thing in this report, that it states at the May 22nd Finance Subcommittee meeting, we discussed this request seemingly favorable, and then a month later at the full school committee meeting, we didn't approve it. I do want to mention that the reason why we didn't discuss in detail, or my reason why we didn't discuss this position in detail at the May 22nd meeting was exactly what Mr. Leary said. We didn't have the class size figures. So it's not as if in May we wanted the position, in June we didn't want the position. It's the fact that we didn't have the sufficient information to make that decision up or down. So I don't think it's the right thing to go into the fine arts teachers. That's just a department that has struggled over the past few years. I've seen it struggle when I was there. And I just think that we need to look at this in another way. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Ms. Cotton.
I would just like to agree with all of my colleagues that we did not have the enrollment numbers, and we still do not as of today. I would like to ask Mr. Resmerich, are those the only 2 positions that are currently unfilled?
We have a fine arts and English and ELL. And based on a report that we heard that refugee numbers are going to be increasing, we don't want to mess with ELL. So that puts us choosing between an English teacher and a fine arts teacher. I agree. Fine arts is not the place to touch. That wouldn't be what we'd want to do. But at this time, we can't, I remember in some of the earlier discussions, questions were raised about particularly social studies classes. There are 2 or 3 sections of low enrolled social studies, even meeting the same time period, could have been combined. That's all true. We can't do that now. I can't just say to a social studies teacher, you go teach special ed, or I can't eliminate a social studies teacher. I can't eliminate a science teacher at this time of the year because their numbers are low. Those are things that we could do earlier in the year, but now we're constrained by which positions just haven't been filled. So the choices are English and the fine arts. The English is a larger course load, and I'm looking at the calendar. I'm looking at the clock. We need to get schedules done. We need to get these out to our students. Eliminating that English position sets us a lot farther back in the scheduling process. It affects more students who've already been scheduled. because that teacher's just got a larger caseload. The art teacher had a smaller caseload, the art position had a smaller caseload, fewer students. We believe we can absorb them better in other elective art classes. It wouldn't have been my choice. I think preferably we would have gone back and considered more thoughtfully, where can we realign this department, that department, what can we do? But at this point, we're doing what we can do and what we can get done.
Ms. Scott?
How could that process have happened better? How could you have looked, or who should have been looking at the enrollment trend for, like I said, we still haven't received them right now. I mean, how could we?
Well, it could have been everywhere, all along the line. When the positions were presented, when, the first meeting, the second meeting, the third meeting, when we were talking about this new special ed teacher coming in, those would have been, the questions could have been raised. We could have been looking at realignment. But
Any further discussion? Mr. Leary?
Thank you, Mayor. So the schedule's already made up then?
the master schedule is built. The schedule of which teachers are teaching how many classes and which period are they going to be. The bulk of that, the vast majority of that is done. Okay. At this stage in the summer, the scheduler goes through and makes sure that every schedule for every student is the best it can be. If a student made 7 class requests and has a conflict in getting, physics or band, well, where can the physics class be rescheduled so that he can get band and then he can get physics a different period of the day and move his English class? And it's a big jigsaw puzzle. That's what takes the time now. He's about halfway through the school in really fine-tuning that work. If we were to say, suddenly we have one less English teacher, he's got to go back now to every student that was scheduled to that English teacher and consider, okay, I've got 150 kids now, where are they all going to go?
So we're 50% of the way as of today.
In the fine-tuning part. So the master schedule is done. When I say 50%, 50% of the school has a completed, you got everything you asked for schedule.
And the second is, and all the teachers are actually hired right now?
Short of a couple, these ELL and the English and the art teacher.
So all the social study teachers are hired, all the science teachers are hired, all the mathematics
Well,
teachers?
we haven't hired anybody. They're rollovers from last year.
So there's no open positions right
Correct.
now? Okay, so there's no individual, okay.
Correct.
See, I think that the frustration revolves around not having this class size information when we do go through these meetings. And I think that's when we start now in September, we need the actual class sizes and go through that data long before we come up to the 3 meetings. That frustration was presented that we had serious enrollment increases in kindergarten and first grade and a serious reduction in the high school. And we asked for the information again and again, where are the class sizes information? Where is the class size information? So that's the frustration. And the fact that we're not able to manage that, and, well, we are managing it. I guess we are not happy with that management result. I'd take exception to, the committee could have done it in the 3 meetings and asked the question. The question was really asked. The question was, where's the class size information? We have a significant reduction. It doesn't make it easy, I understand that. The management of it is a challenge because there are needs for students to get certain classes. I'm very frustrated. It leads into the other report that we get later on about more frustration regarding the class size, so I'm going to stop here tonight. But I do take exception to the fact that the way the report was written articulates, everybody was pretty cool, basically paraphrasing that we had a special ed, no one said anything. People kept saying time and time again, we don't have real good solid class size information. I said when we had the issues here that I didn't want to go through at that budget point and actually reduce the number of teachers by student, because I felt that was unfair to the high school, and at that point in time, it wasn't going to be a positive effect to our flagship, that we wouldn't go through that exercise at this late hour. But I felt at that point adding a teacher would not be appropriate. So that was back in June. So we knew in June that we had to like move this around. So I guess it is what it is at this point. I don't have any better alternatives right now, so I guess I'm failing at that point, but I am very, very discouraged. Thank you.
Ms. Martin?
So we can anticipate getting class size data when? Ever? I'm sorry, is that not something we're working on? Class size data?
When you say class size data,
I mean, the size of our classes that would allow us to determine how many teachers we actually need at the high school?
for next year,
Yeah, for next year.
I can probably print what we have.
So I'm sorry, you can complete your thought, I'm sorry.
I need to check with the scheduler, and Mark Lowell does the data. I don't know, I can check with him what his projections are. He's not complete. I think we're looking at having the schedules complete for the year, first or second week of August, and hope to have those mailed out to students about that time. That's when we're done, and that's when we're final on this, with the class projection.
So we should be able to get this information in 2 weeks.
Thereabouts, 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks, yes.
Okay. I certainly share the frustration that's been expressed this evening. Class size is something, and class size at the high school specifically, we've talked about since January. I mean, we've known that the numbers were going down, so it certainly hasn't snuck up on us. I think being able to get accurate data has been one of the biggest challenges, and I know that when we're looking at class sizes for classes that are under 10, which was one of the last reports that we saw, that tells a pretty dramatic story about the class size ratio as it stands at the high school. At this point, based on the recommendations of the administration, this is a situation where we've been boxed in, and this, in my opinion, the school committee has no other real option other than to approve adding the special education position. Legally, we're required to provide these services based on IEPs, and it's a necessary position. I am not willing to sacrifice a fine arts person or an English person, English teacher, to make this happen. I think that the poor management that led us to this place, both in terms of certainly this committee and the administration in general, is disappointing all around for all of us. And I think that, unfortunately, we are again backed into a corner where our only option is to create this new special ed position, reward our own failings, which is disappointing. But at the end of the day, our failings cannot be paid for by students. So our students require this, and I think that the only option that's in front of us is to take that action. And I would put that in the form of a motion at this point, that we add a new special education position at Lowell High School.
Motion by Ms. Martin, seconded by Ms. Ross-Sikwich. On the motion, Mr. Gignac.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just a little confused. How can we not know how many students we're going to have next year until less than a month before the students start? That makes absolutely no sense to me. The fact that we've been asking this question since May, and the fact that we have to wait until August for a response, it just makes absolutely no sense to me. And it baffles me. It baffles me that we're going to look at, cutting a fine arts position to put in this one position when we have no idea how many kids would even be in that fine arts class, or be in that English class, or be in that ELL class. It just makes absolutely zero sense to me. I do support Ms. Martin's motion to fund a special education position at the high school, funded out of our suspense account. Yeah, thank you.
Madam Superintendent.
I apologize for being at this particular place. And in Mr. Rosmeric's comments, he did speak about it setting back the scheduler. And so I would request that the headmaster go back to Mr. Liu. I would offer the services of central office and Paul Schlickman to see if there is any other place where we can absorb, because as the committee knows, when we saw the second semester schedules, we did see some places where there was extra space. And so I know that it would, I don't know if it would, I just need clarification on that part, Mr. Rosmerick, is if in fact we went forward and said, I have right now 3 classes that have less than 20 kids, if that special kind of a look could come back and there could be another recommendation, because we can, putting more staff is not what this is about. It's how, in fact, we're managing what we have, and I know that you understand that. And I'm going to ask publicly, what, in fact, would that take? How far behind would we be if we asked tomorrow Mr. Liu to kind of say, are you having any something telling you that social studies in 10th grade is a little low and we could do something, so there would be another option. I know our timeline's difficult because we come back on August 1st, but I would ask, what would that do to us?
Well, maybe I misspoke. Yes, I can certainly do that, and he and I can spend a couple hours tomorrow morning and look at that and have some answer by, the end of the day tomorrow. It's not, just to investigate, it just takes that much time. We don't have no idea how many students we have or what our classes are. I can give you information, I can give you round numbers. I don't have them with me right now, but I can get a report tomorrow on generally how many students have requested high honors English, how many students have requested English 9, English 10, social studies 1, 2, 3. I can have that, it's a printout that I can get tomorrow. How many sections we're offering of each one. I mean, we have all that. The question of how many, what are class sizes of period 1 social studies for this teacher and period 2 social studies for that teacher, that we don't have until the schedule is done and complete. So yes, we certainly do have an idea of how many students we have. We know how many students have requested this class, that class, the other class, and then you can do the averages. Then it becomes a problem of the scheduling. It doesn't always work out. If 120 students request a particular class, that doesn't always work out to 4 classes of 30 or 5 classes of 24, because it just may not fit their schedule. So you may target for 5 classes of 24, you wind up with a 30 and a 12 and an 18 and a 24 and whatever the last one is, just because of what other things students have requested. As far as the juggling and the balancing, we can look at that, as I say, tomorrow. We'll take some time and look at that. But if I find that, we can consolidate social studies classes, that does us no good, because we can't, unless there's something contractually I'm not understanding, I don't think I can eliminate a social studies position at this time of the year. Consolidating science teachers, I don't think that does us anything. I believe I'm constrained to the positions that are still open. If there's something that I don't understand, we can look at that. But we can investigate this tomorrow, and we'll talk tomorrow.
Ms. Scott, and then Mr. Conway.
I agree with Ms. Martin on the motion that we are boxed in on it. I would like to ask, when do we start surveying students, and when do we start forecasting, classes? I mean, so many, the class size, they need their math courses, or, when do you start doing the trending for?
Students we finalize the course catalog around January. Students get that toward the end of February, and they start making their requests. At that point, students take time meeting with their teachers, talking with their guidance counselor, talking with their parents. Gee, I think I want to take honors geometry. I want to take college level this. I want to take that. And they figure it out. They have a couple of week period to have those conferences, get it in. They turn in their course requests. That's around the beginning of March or the middle of March. That all goes into the computer. At that point, we have ideas already of how many students have requested English 9 college, English 9 honors, English 9 high honors, English 10 college, English 10. We have that information middle of March. Then we start working with our department heads into, okay, if 120 students have requested this class, is that going to be 5 sections of 24, or are we going to try to get by with 4 sections of 30? Depends on what the class is, depends on what grade level is, what the level, So all of that kind of work, and then it becomes a little bit of give and take. If we're going to go with 4 30s in this one, can we do 5 or 6 20s in something else? And keep the class sizes low in the kinds of classes where we know we want low numbers, like 9th grade core courses, where we really want to keep numbers low for freshmen. And we might sacrifice numbers in an upper level, honor senior class, where class management isn't an issue and we can afford slightly larger classes. So that's the balance and the juggle. All of that goes on, I'd say, through about March and April. The master schedule of finally how many teachers are teaching exactly what classes and exactly how many sections of each class, that goes into the computer toward the end of the school year, around May or the beginning of June. And then the computer starts doing its work of compiling individual students into actual classes. And that's where you get your, this is period 1 and that's period 2 and that's period 3, and the master schedule is really built. So all along the way, we have different levels of certainty, different levels of knowledge of what we have. But generally, how many students have asked for what and how many teachers probably do we need for each different thing, that happens around March or April.
And is that related to the administration? How many teachers, like by March or April, is it fair to say that you know how many social study teachers we probably need within the district, or?
Generally, that's, we can take a look and we see how many students in how many subjects and how many sections do we need, and we compare that number of sections to the number of teachers that we have on staff. And, we generally work with, with the number of teachers we have on staff, the number of requests. Each teacher represents 5 sections. How many sections can we offer of the various classes? That's the thought process that goes into it. So if we were to be eliminating a teacher based on class size, that's probably about the time of the year that those discussions would be taking place. And it has, in the past when we've been told, early in the year, the high school needs to cut X hundreds of thousands or millions or whatever it is, dollars, that's where that takes place. We go in and we look at, okay, where do we need to cut staff and how many classes are we going to lose in what class and what subject and that sort of thing.
Mr. Conway.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I actually find this discussion a bit embarrassing, that we don't know at this point, and it certainly should be, I imagine it's probably confusing the public, that here we are with officials sitting here and not knowing how many students we have at the high school. I realize that there is you have to have some flexibility with the student population, especially, let's say, the incoming freshmen. But you certainly can use that old argument of antecedent probability on what you're going to have for that particular year, because you have a bit of a track record, you have the data, you certainly in this world of technology, you understand the feeder schools that are coming into the high school. You already know your sophomore and junior and senior year. You know the population there, and it just confuses me that it takes that long. I mean, as far as the, I agree with Ms. Martin. I mean, we're kind of behind the 8 ball here. The preliminary data that comes out and I think the headmaster just said, was it March or April? March or April, I mean, that is an incredible indicator on what direction we're going to go in. I mean, obviously, you've got to tweak the system, but this committee, different members of this committee has asked for weeks about numbers. And it seems as though it's always going to be, well, in a couple weeks, I think we can maybe have something, or maybe I can get some numbers for you tomorrow or the next day or whatever it is. I'd like to have something a little bit more solid. And if it's going to take 2 weeks or 3 weeks to get some numbers that are going to make sense, that are going to help guide us in what direction we should be going in, then so be it. Then let's make that date 2 weeks or 3 weeks, and that's it. Bring them forward, these numbers. But I hate this. I hate the whole idea of, well, maybe another week or two. It depends. Well, I don't know what day is today. Well, I don't know. This isn't a good day, but maybe next month. We need to have some concrete numbers, because the decisions that we're making, all of us here, is, first of all, we're dealing with 14,000 students, roughly 14,000 students, and we're spending a lot of money. And we want to make sure that we spend that money as effective and efficiently as possible so that we get the best education for our kids. But for us to make these decisions, I mean, I think we have to have some concrete information. And you need concrete information in order to make your recommendations too. You can't be making the recommendations in the dark, and we can't be voting in the dark. So I would hope that we can clear this up as quick as possible, especially in this world of technology, so that we could certainly have that data available to us as soon as possible. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Further discussion on the report? Ms. Ross-Sikowicz.
A comment that struck me was that we would have to ask an administrator to cut and reduce their requested funding for their building. We shouldn't have to do that. That's incumbent upon the administrator to look at the trending and look at the numbers to figure out exactly what they're going to need. It's not, you're given a balloon amount of money and you fill in that space with whatever you can. It's, okay, we had a reduction of 500 students this year, so we need less money for teachers. So for us, that's very helpful, because then we could take those funds and actually redistribute it to our elementary schools, which are seeing explosions in children. So that's where I'm at. I'm a little taken aback by that comment. Just my thought. Thanks.
Any further discussion on the report? Mr. Gignac?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One last comment. Regarding this timeline, if students are submitting their requests in March and it takes April and May for the administration at the high school to work with the department heads to figure out the teacher schedules, why is it that not until August the schedules are complete? Why do we have to wait until August to have solid figures? When in March we have an idea, April and May you do your internal discussions, June, July, August. It takes 3 months to actually put something together. I just don't understand that management tactic, that schedule. That I don't know if it's been going on for a long time, but it just makes no sense to me that it's taken months and months and months to give actual data of class size, where you need the teachers. And to touch upon Ms. Rosikowicz's comment, if you realize that numbers are down in certain areas in March, then you should tell the superintendent and her staff, hey, our numbers are low here, but we really need this. That's a management issue. Our numbers are low, but we can use that money for something else. The fact that this year we were able to bring back positions doesn't mean that we need to create positions just because we have the money. This is a different situation because it's a special education position. But this should have been brought up a long time ago with the data to back it. The fact that we're discussing this today, it just makes absolutely no sense. But I support Ms. Martin's motion and whatever we're talking about.
We do have a motion on the floor by Ms. Martin to create the position of special education teacher at the high school under the suspense account. Roll call, please.
Ms. Ross Sikowicz?
Yes.
Ms. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Conway?
Yes.
Mr. Gignac?
Yes.
Mr. Leary?
Yes.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
Mayor Murphy?
Yes.
7 yeas approved.
Next, entertain a motion to accept the report. It's report of progress by Mr. Gignac, seconded by Mr. Conway. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Next item is the Lowell High School House Office Interns. Madam Superintendent.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. There was a motion by Mr. Leary and Ms. Scott that requested me to report on the feasibility of Lowell High School administration assigning an administrative intern to each of the houses in the main building of Lowell High School. So I asked Mr. Rosmerick to look within his schedule and to see if, in fact, one person, especially in the 4 houses, because there's more support in the freshman academy, could step up and we could develop that kind of program. Upon look at the schedule, it's the recommendation of the headmaster to move towards this, but to move toward this more in the second semester. That is the recommendation that was made as a result of that particular motion. I will ask Mr. Rosmerick if there's any more he wants to add, or if I think I've captured it, and take any comments you may have.
I was very fortunate to have office interns when I was a housemaster, and I found them to be absolutely incredible help. It certainly helped to make the system, the house office, more effective. It also gave an understanding to a teacher on what did take place in the house office and helped to train them for potential administrative positions, growing leaders in our own system, which I think is extremely important. I think it's a great idea, but I'm not sure why we have to wait to January. If at all possible, why couldn't we put this in September? Is there any particular reason that we couldn't do that? Madam Superintendent?
I'm going to ask Mr. Rosmerick to ask,
Okay,
because
all
it's
right,
his
okay.
report to
Thank
me.
you.
Thank you.
Well, once again, it's just a matter of timing and the schedule. The model for the house office interns, I agree, it's a great program, and we think it's something that served a purpose when it existed. We would like to get it back. The model was to take away two teaching sections for teachers. Here we are in the middle of July, and we don't even know who the candidates would be. So it's just a matter of practicality to get it started for September 1. If we were to post it, and it was a posted position, so we post it, it goes out for 3 weeks, we get our applicants, it's going to be mid-August before we even are interviewing and having who the candidates are, and at that point we have a week and a half or 2 weeks to now change 8 or 10 scheduled classes and take away those from the schedule, and now we're rescheduling 8, 10, upwards of 250, 300 students. So that's the reason for not shooting for it right now. If we were to just do a modified version of it, let's say take teachers off a duty position, something that doesn't affect a teaching schedule, that we could look at doing right away. That's the rationale for waiting.
Mr. Conway.
I think that, I understand what you're saying, but I truly believe that it perhaps is not the most educationally sound thing to do when you have teachers' schedules that are set and they already have their students, and then all of a sudden and then you're going to change in midstream. I mean, I think it would be a more effective way if it was done in the beginning of the year, to be honest with you. I mean, it sounds like we don't have our schedules set up now anyways, right? I mean, we're not sure.
The master schedule is built. The master schedule is which teacher we expect is teaching how many classes, and you've got 2 sections of European history, 3 sections of U.S. history. They're going to be periods 1, 2, 3, 5, and 7. That much is done.
But Mr. Rosemary, let me just ask you a question on it. Now, let's assume for argument's sake that that somebody has set up five classes, and they're teaching 5 classes of history.
Right.
And then in January, this individual wants to apply for one of these interns' office. Now, you have X amount of students that have this teacher. What happens to those kids? Now they get a new teacher coming in.
Well, that's true.
Second
The
semester. You see what I'm saying there?
Oh, absolutely. The semester is just, we already break things at the semester.
And because, because it happened before, and the argument that was used, that thinking took place before, and the argument was used was, well, I don't know, maybe we can do it to a phys ed teacher and bring them in. It doesn't affect things as much. And what ended up happening is the physics teacher or the chemistry teacher or the biology teacher then didn't necessarily have the opportunity to participate in that program. That's all I'm saying. And I understand the complexities that take place with the scheduling, but it's a shame that it wasn't already, that we didn't have it done earlier. You could put that whole package together pretty quick. But anyways, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Ms. Martin.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I voted for this motion when my colleague had presented it, wanting to bring back this program, and we've certainly seen, when it was in place, we had seen some real success with it. It was one of the many ways in which we wanted to invest in our current staff. We wanted to give leaders within our teaching community the opportunity to have some administrative experience, and I think that that's a very positive thing. And I think moving forward, it's certainly something I would be supportive of. I don't think we're at a juncture right now where the high school can take this on. I think that's been clearly communicated. My recommendation would be that I think we would be better served, rather than trying to do it on the fly, trying to get someone in January when you're messing with the all-important schedule. I think this is just something that we need to let pass right now, and we need to look at next year. Next school year. With the added time, I'm confident the administration would be able to build a program that would be, have the strengths that we need. But I just think trying to do this, again, trying to jerry-rig this together at this point doesn't seem to be in the best interest of the high school and the administration there. I think we're better served to focus on the many issues that are confronting us right now, and perhaps leave this one to be taken on in the next school year. I'd welcome my colleagues' opinions on that.
Thank you. Mr. Leary.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with Ms. Martin. I mean, you can't really do it in the middle of the semester. It's a really good program. When we put it in place, when we designed it, it was myself, Dr. Howe, and Bill Samaras that really put it together, and it really worked. It did a lot of good things. It gave people an opportunity to get into management, and some of those folks are actually in management. I think it's important. I think it should be a top priority. It does do a lot of the things the goals that we're trying to achieve: reduce the dropout rate, help the house masters be proactive and help them get through their schedule. So yeah, Ms. Martin unfortunately is right on this one. Thanks.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the report? What's the wish of the committee? Ms. Martin?
I'd make a motion that we accept the report as a report of progress and postpone implementation of the intern program until the FY 13-14 school year.
Motion by Ms. Martin, seconded by Ms. Rosikowicz. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Next, we have the end-of-year health report. Madam Superintendent.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to lighten this up a bit. This year, the end-of-the-year health services report we had health services provided to 1,193 students, where we had almost 5,000 procedures which took place. The number of children, as you can see by the chart in your report, has intensified as we go. So from 2009, there were 782 children, and in 2012, there were 1,193 children. So this is a program that is offered to our young people from Tufts Community Dental Program, and we've partnered with them, and they have done these sealants and fluoride treatments and gone around town to provide this delivered program, and I congratulate the Office of Student Services for helping this program to run and to grow every year. Additionally, the Lowell Public Schools benefits from the New England Eye On-Site Mobile Clinic. And so this is a collaboration with the Pediatric Mobile Vision Clinic out of the New England College of Optometry, and 90 students in the Lincoln, Merkland, Shaughnessy Elementary Schools, and Butler, Daly, Stockholm Middle Schools were given glasses. 60 out of 90 got glasses. And so they, again, another program that has grown just in the 2 years. So in 2010-11, 75 children had eye exams, 48 children received glasses. And this current year, 120 had eye exams, 63 received glasses for no charge. So this is an amazing program. And so the third part of this reporting out, is how nurses that attend our field trips with children. We have children who have specific needs, whether it be whatever medical need they may have. We encourage that those children do attend our field trips, and there are many times that they'll need specialized nursing for us to make that happen. And so we have secured agreement with Commonwealth Nursing Service, and we have been able over the last 3 years to basically double the amount of young people who can attend field trips because, again, the support of that entity, but also, of course, our Student Services department. The data at the last part of this report is about essential school health services. So we all know there is a data that's collected on how many visits to school nurses we have. So we have very busy school nurses because we had more than 12,000 visits to school nurses last year. So obviously, some kids never went, but some children went several times. So this is a report just keeping everybody up to date on the particular services that we offer our children out of the Office of Student Services. Thank you.
Ms. Ross Sikowicz.
Thank you, Ms. Mayor. I just had a question under the nursing services for field trips portion. Now, we spent $9,500 as a district to send nurses on? Okay, so my question would then be, is there a potential that these nursing services are actually third-party billable to Medicaid, billable to private insurance, whatever, thus lightening the cost for the district? I'm just curious if that's been explored.
It's a great question. Ms. Murphy would love to answer that one.
Thank you.
We haven't explored that. About 3 years ago, the committee had asked me to look into making sure that all students were allowed to go on field trips, because at the time we had some students with some significant medical issues, specifically around diabetes, that needed to have a nurse, and oftentimes parents could not go as chaperones to the field trips. And that's where this program came about, and we started looking at contracting with agencies to come in and provide the nurses, because public health nurses through the health department are not able to lead the schools to provide the coverage. We haven't looked at third-party billing, but that's certainly something we can look into.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the report? Mr. Conway, question about dentures? All set? I'd entertain a motion to accept as reported progress by Mr. Gignac, seconded by Ms. Martin. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed or voted? Next, we have the end-of-year discipline report. Madam Superintendent.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a report from Assistant Superintendent Murphy. At the end of the year, we report out all the arrests that have occurred on school grounds, all the expulsion, long-term suspension hearings by school, and the students are being readmitted after long-term suspension. Also, a comparison, there's a comparison over time of how in fact our data has progressed or improved or not. There also is a 4-year comparison of expulsion and long-term suspension hearings. So it's the end of the year data that is reported for your review or any questions you may have.
Thank you. Any discussion on the report? Entertain a motion to accept this report of progress by Mr. Gignac, seconded by Mr. Leary. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Next, we have end-of-year backpack food report. Madam Superintendent.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, this is a report just giving you an update on what we receive through the Greater Boston Food Bank and the Merrimack Valley Food Bank. They have created and provided opportunities for our children to have healthy snacks and nutritious food. Over 350 young people receive food through the backpack program. From the Greater Boston Food Bank this year, over 100 backpacks were delivered to the Merkland School, and 25 backpacks also went to the Greenouch School, and the program is going to increase at the Greenouch School, so young people will be able to take food home to their families and have food for the weekends. Also, there is additional donations from the Greater Boston Food Bank of 300 food banks to the district, and these are foods that that stay, I'm missing a word, but I'll get to it, that, whatever. What's the word I'm looking for? All right, well, it'll come to me. They stay long shelf life. They have a long shelf life. So they have provided 300 food bags like this particular time. If you went to summer school, or if you go to summer school, in the front halls of summer schools are food, non-perishable. Yay, thank you. I knew this group could get it for me. Thank you very much.
Good job.
Non-perishable. If I keep on talking, it comes. Non-perishable food. And to be honest with you, it is amazing. As a matter of fact, in our kindergarten program, there's too much food in a bag to go in a little kid's backpack. So they were splitting it up so more kids could get it. So the generosity of these programs is substantial, and little ones are looking for it. They're looking for it, taking the food home, and they know that it helps them to get through the downtime when they're not with us. So that's from the Greater Boston Food Bank. Merrimack Valley Food Bank has also been as generous to us, and there's 155 students at the Lincoln School who are getting those healthy snacks, and additionally, they're at the Stocklosa School where there have been healthy snacks. So there is great need in our school district, and these agencies are providing us with what we need to get. So thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. I just have one question, I swear. Is there any idea of expanding this to other schools within the district?
We always have ideas for expansion, and the Office of Student Services will ask Ann what she's thinking, but I know that the Merkland went on. The Merkland School has been receiving this. Now it's being expanded to the Stocklosa School and in the Greenouch School. So I don't know if there's another plan for the upcoming year, Ms. Murphy.
Actually, the Merrimack Valley Food Bank has been very generous and we're going to be expanding the program into the Morey School next year. And we're hoping to expand the number of food bags for the Greenouch next year. We did send out a questionnaire, a survey to all of the principals, asking them if they would be interested if funds became available and Merrimack Valley Food Bank could expand to even more schools than the Morey. So next year, elementary-wise, we're looking at the Merkland, the Greenouch, the Lincoln, the Morey, as well as we'll continue to provide the snacks to the nurse at the Stocklosa School, because we really found a need. We had a lot of students who were going down to the nurse hungry.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
Just on your comment about the 60, in here it says one of the nurses says that 60% of the children reporting at the nurse's office are there because of hunger. How many, or do all of our schools provide free breakfast, or do they not?
We have breakfast at all of our schools. But it's during the school day when students will come down, especially the middle school students. They're not always there early enough to have breakfast. They'll come in a little bit.
Okay, no, I was asking,
After
someone had told me that not all of the schools were included in the free
elementary
breakfast program, so I was just
Mr. Lang?
wondering about
Yeah,
that.
Mr. Lang.
the universal breakfast program is only open to the elementary level, not the middle of the high school. All of our schools have breakfast. At the elementary level, I think there were 2 or 3 schools last year that did not participate in the universal breakfast program, so they had paid breakfast. But for this coming fall, all of our elementary schools will have the free breakfast through universal.
Okay, thank you. That was my concern, was I've been told a few of them weren't participating in the program. I thought it was a really important program. And also, is there any way there's no expansion into the middle school level? This is just an elementary program? Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the report? Entertain a motion to accept this report of progress by Ms. Martin, seconded by Mr. Gignac. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Next, we have end-of-year bullying prevention and intervention report. Madam Superintendent.
Yes, annually, there is a report that is required for the school system to talk about the professional development, what's gone on, the curriculum, the direct instruction, and also what's going on, how many cases of reported bullying. So this particular year, there are 111 reported investigations, 34 at elementary, 77 at middle, and 4 at the high school. There were 53 findings of bullying in those particular reported cases, and there were also other professional development that was done on a large basis. Is the social emotional learning standards were presented to all our leaders, and we're really working towards making sure those social emotional learning standards become the middle of what people need to know and be able to do to educate young people, because there are a number of social emotional needs in our district. This particular report is detailed on what happens in every single school. So if you look further into the report, the social skills and violence prevention programs are delineated for every one of our schools within the system. So this is a report just keeping you up to date on where we are at this particular time.
Thank you. Any discussion? Ms. Ross-Sidquich.
My only question is, how do we measure the success of these initiatives within each of the schools? Is there a survey process? What kind of data is collected?
Madam
Thank you.
Superintendent.
Yes, there are a couple of data points. There are student surveys, but most especially, we maintain all of our discipline and all of what's happening in the buildings on X2. So we submit, we have every kind of altercation that is put there. So at the end of the year, we look at how much, what has happened, where there are trends in buildings, and so then they look at that at the end of every year and reassess the curriculum. But there was student surveys this particular years on different grade levels, but they do assess and they look at where they need to make different inroads. And as you all know from knowing about the lives of children, sometimes there are cohorts of kids you have to watch, like a 5th grade that kind of goes up, you know, that has some challenging behaviors and whatnot. So they absolutely look at the data, and they look at the programs and try and tweak what they need over time. So yes.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Entertain a motion to accept this report of progress by Mr. Leary, seconded by Ms. Ross-Sidquich. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Next, we have the home visiting project. Madam Superintendent.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At the very first subcommittee meeting of this superintendency, this committee approved a home visit program. And it was a student support service subcommittee meeting, and you okayed us to put $1,000 to develop a social worker, teacher, and administrative, kind of a cohort to start making home visits across the district. It was, the Office of Student Services did some substantial training on how, in fact, would be the best way to visit homes, the background information you need, how you should deliver that kind of program. And we surveyed all of the people who received these visits, homes, practitioners, even the parents whom we visited, and young people. And so out of the 45 teacher survey, 95% indicated that the home visit was valuable, and 93 reported having a better understanding of the student following the visit. Parents reported, the communication was reported improved, and there was improvement also academically that was as a result of this visitation. There also, we received parent surveys, where we got surveys back, and 95% of the parents in the different languages felt the home visitation program was very helpful. 87 believed that the relationships with parents improved, and as a result, parents felt that the children's education had improved. 82% felt that way. So there's a lot of data here on what, in fact, parents said in the surveys, the demographics of who we visited, about safety and insight, what we learned from the survey process. So from a little grassroots program that you okayed as a committee, that we could go forward, it really took off. As a matter of fact, it was the one consistent way that schools used money from their own professional development funding. They found it very valuable. They found what they learned by visiting homes was substantial. So that's a report of progress on that program that was approved by the school committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Any discussion on the report? Ms. Martin?
Just a couple quick questions. So in terms of the recommendations, looking at reducing the number to 10, is that, earlier in the report, we state that there are 15 schools who are interested in continuing. Are we going to be removing 5, or?
Ms. Murphy?
Thank you. If I could, when we first looked at the program, there were 19 schools who, at the beginning of the school year, showed interest. 15 actually continued in some fashion within the pilot. When we took a look at the schools that seemed to have the greatest commitment to the program, not only had the staff attend the professional development, complete the home visits, come to the feedback sessions, complete the surveys, we really had 10 schools that were strongly committed to the program. And so those are the 10 schools that we would like to continue with, and we're hoping to also pull in the 4 classes at the Rogers School as well.
Okay. From the very beginning, when this was first presented to us, I think it's just an incredibly exciting project, and I'm glad to see that we did see some success with it. And certainly enough that it warrants moving forward. So I think that's really encouraging. I think it's a different approach, and it's one that really can have a profound impact, not on just that child's 1 year, in their school, but honestly, their entire educational time with us here in the city of Lowell. So I'm glad we're moving forward. I think if we're looking at these 10 schools as the place where we can really expand this model and make it work and work well, then I think the next step will certainly have to be moving to expand it again. But I can certainly understand in year 2, it certainly does make sense to focus on the schools that are high functioning and that can offer us the most information and experience, so that our efforts towards replicating this across the district could be, as strong as possible. So thank you very much. It's really great to get this kind of a report after the conclusion of a year of a very, I think, innovative program.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the report? Entertain a motion to accept the report of progress by Ms. Martin, seconded by Mr. Gignac. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Next, we have community connections. Madam Superintendent.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Murphy. This is a report submitted by Assistant Superintendent Murphy to answer the motion that was requested by committee member Kim Scott for the administration to provide a full list of the nonprofits between 2007 and the present that have provided wraparound services, collaborative, and supported the Lowell Public Schools for striving for student achievement. This report should include the stated goals and objectives of these entities, copies of reports detailing on how the goals are fulfilled, and if the Lowell Public Schools provided any funding. If you look in the attachments, there is a complete list of the partnerships and the description of the work that they did. And I submit this for your review and ask if you have any questions.
Any discussion on the report? Entertained to accept as a report of progress by Ms. Martin, seconded by Mr. Gignac. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Next, we have district attendance team. Madam Superintendent.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is again a report by Assistant Superintendent Ann Murphy, where they've worked this year during the last couple of years on a integrated comprehensive resource grant, and there are representatives from the Department of Children and Families, Juvenile Probate Court, Attendance Office, School Administration, who meet monthly at the McAuliffe School from a grant, and this program was now expanded to the Robinson School, where both families from that school also met. And this is a data that's talking about the success of the program. It appears that this past year, 183 families were invited to attend the district attendance team, with 40% of the parents attending, and the parents discussed the role of the attendance team. 89% of the families improved the attendance, and individual student attendance went up to 44%, from 2% increase to 44% in attendance. So Ms. District Support Specialist Carol Rossio has been the specialist of this particular program. It started off with a grant, but it's been expanded, so we're seeing the data improve by looking with a targeted eye at attendance and families who need to work with us to improve. So that's what this report tells you. I welcome comments and concerns.
Thank you. Motion to accept this report of progress by Mr. Gignac, seconded by Ms. Martin. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Next, we have coordinated program review. Madam Superintendent.
This report is talking about the outcomes from the coordinated program review, especially the section about the civil rights review. And so they looked into 11, they looked into all the areas, but we found that 18 out of 54 areas were partially implemented for special education, 10 out of 27 were partially implemented for civil rights, and 11 out of 23 areas are partially implemented for career and vocational education. The CPR team has to write a response for every particular item that is not implemented fully, so they'll have a kind of a response, which we will see the details on that particular piece where we have what we have to improve on and what kind of response we have to have. And then there's always a mid-cycle review, so within 3 years we have to make sure we're making progress on these coordinated program review pieces. I'll ask Mrs. Murphy if there are any more details, or if the committee would like more details at this particular time.
Ms. Murphy.
Many of the areas, certainly within civil rights, have been addressed through the handbooks that we had talked about at the Student Support Services Subcommittee meeting. Some of it was minor language changes that we have now corrected, and that will go into the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. They have approved our corrective action plan, and so we will have the year to make all of the necessary changes, provide progress reports on a quarterly, and then by the end of the year, we'll have to have everything completely implemented.
Thank you. Motion to accept is reported progress by Mr. Leary, seconded by Ms. Rossikwich. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Next, we have the Lowell Police Department notification. Madam Superintendent.
Thank you, Mayor Murphy. We may have to take Miss Murphy's iPad away from her, but here is another report. Thank you so much for all these wonderful reports, Miss Murphy. This is the police notification of the safety incidents. So here is, after a motion from Committee Member Kristen Rosikowicz, requests that the school department coordinate with the Lowell Police Department to establish a formal policy, a proper notification with regard to incidents in the vicinity around our district schools. And this was after an incident that I know happened in the winter. And so Assistant Superintendent Ann Murphy worked with Deputy Superintendent Arthur Ryan and Sergeant Jack Dolan so that they can, in fact, facilitate better communication among the school systems. The police department were going to issue a directive to its personnel to talk about proper notification when a situation in a neighborhood school arises. And then as a result, a school resource officer should immediately be sent as soon as possible to respond, so someone that knows the schools can be in the area. So that's what they had worked on. The most important part is to not cause any extra panic, and so that's what our team from the police department and student services had worked on. And I welcome any questions or concerns.
Thank you. Entertain a motion to accept this report of progress by Ms. Scott, seconded by Mr. Conway. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Next, we have list of eligible teachers. Madam Superintendent.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Murphy. This is your monthly update on who's eligible. So if you have any questions, I welcome them.
Motion to accept this report of progress by Ms. Martin, seconded by Ms. Rosikowicz. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Next, we have personnel report. Madam Superintendent.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is the most current movement in our district. Any retirements, resignations, movement within our system, transfers, and hiring up to date, up until yesterday. So, thank you.
Thank you. Entertain to accept this report of progress by Ms. Martin, seconded by Ms. Scott. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. We have under new business, capital technology purchase. Madam Superintendent.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is in detail a write-up of what was requested for the purchases in technology upcoming. After all the presentations in our technology subcommittee meetings, we are now getting into the purchasing pieces, and so the recommendation that we've been following through in the funding that has been released from the suspense account are all captured here in this particular list by item for the total of $4,659,548 for capital investment, and this is the actual funding that it will take for us to get up to speed to put into play what was promised earlier, which was 2 labs in a building, a device, either smartboard or Mobi, 1 at each grade level, and a computer in every teacher's classroom, and a couple of computers in each classroom. So I welcome any questions you may have or concerns to Mr. Lang on this particular report.
Just a quick question. I
Mr.
guess-
Leary.
I'm sorry, thank you, Mayor. Got to move it along. Quick question. I guess, when do we need to have this purchased by? Can we set up a finance subcommittee meeting in the next week or so before the third meeting, for the third week in August? Here's my point. The point is, I like to get information regarding, is it cheaper actually not to be self-insured? I mean, how many laptops do we anticipate breaking, that type of thing, stolen? Sometimes it's actually cheaper to be self-insured as opposed to buy the insurance. And I do appreciate it's over a 3-year period of time, so it isn't as dramatic as looking at the aggregate number. But do you need to buy it today as we're purchasing them, or is that part of the program, or?
Yeah, if I can just briefly talk about what we did since the last meeting. We appropriated the $2.7 million from the suspense account for this purchase. I went back to the vendors that we've been dealing with to really come up to the final terms of the agreement. In talking to the primarily K-8 staff, which will be doing the, I don't know what that buzz is, the K-8 staff, which will be doing the outfitting of the new technology. They really preferred to stay with the Mac platform as opposed to PC platform, which most of them are now. And overwhelmingly, if we're going to really start moving towards using smart boards, websites, and things like that, to have the technology be mobile, so if they could use a laptop as opposed to a desktop, to have the same technology during the day that they would use after hours, that was their preference. So basically, when I worked with Apple on this, the plan itself, the actual cost only came in about $100,000 off of what I was projecting, which really isn't that bad, and can be absorbed in the budget. But the one thing we haven't really done a lot of in the past is purchasing the Apple Care, the insurance program that comes with the technology. Oh, wait a second. But given the,
I
given
know you
the,
all want to adjourn, but nobody had to pull the fire alarm, but.
given the just the vast number of pieces of equipment that we were going to be purchasing, on the laptop side, it was about 1,500 or so, and then even the desktops was another 1,500. They proposed we look at purchasing the Apple Care, which is the 3-year both software and hardware protection. And when you broke it down by piece, on the laptops we'd be purchasing for about $44 a year for the next 3 years. You'd be getting 100% coverage on any software or hardware defects that would go wrong with the product. On the desktops, it ended up being about $28 a year for 3 years to provide full coverage. Now, the additional cost comes in year one because you've got to pay for it ahead of time, so that's why you're seeing the uptick in cost now as opposed to having it spread out over the 3 years. But I thought it was worth bringing back to you as a consideration to purchase that just with 3,000 pieces of equipment and having people really be able to use it and have it be functioning. I personally think it's worth the investment this time around to do that. We are under a little bit of a time crunch because working with Apple to try to get this stuff really in on day one, I want to try to get the order in by the end of this week, early next week, so that the material comes to us by early August, and then we have a 2.5 week to 3 week window to really do a lot of the unboxing, imaging, and getting the equipment to start rolling out.
The question I get, though, is regarding the insurance piece of it. So do we need to make it, when we buy them, we need to buy the insurance?
We need
is
to
what
buy
you're
the
saying.
insurance.
So you can't wait until the 18th, whenever our meeting is in August, if we review the numbers.
If we
You
did,
can't,
we
is what you're
wouldn't
saying.
have the equipment for the start of the school year.
Okay. All right.
Thank you. Any further discussion? What's the wish of the committee?
Mr. Mayor, I'd make a motion that we accept the recommendation of the administration and make the appropriate budget transfers from the suspense account. Well, have we already done that, or do we just need to do the increase?
You would just be doing the increase in the last paragraph of the second page. It would just be to authorize a transfer of $432,635 from the suspense account to fund this so that we can purchase the 3-year Apple Care warranty with the equipment.
What he said.
Motion,
Well, just-
motion to approve the
Second.
transfer of $432,635 by Ms. Martin, second by
Second.
Mr. Leary.
Just-
Mr. Leary.
And this is, the insurance covers what? Just the physical, actual,
Any hardware or software, anything that breaks on the
so
machine.
in theory, a virus, I guess, in this, I mean, Apples don't, I guess,
Yeah,
apparently
like,
get viruses.
I'm
but-
particularly concerned with like the laptops, if because people are going to be bringing them home. If they're logging onto their home network at home and they pick up, say, a virus at home or something like that, if it does affect the software on the machine, or if you have a screen that goes dead on a laptop, it's very expensive to replace. For the $40 a year, basically, I think it's worth the cost. But this would cover any hardware physically happening to the machine, anything except for being stolen, and so any software issues that the machines would have for 3 years.
Or theft. Ms. Rossick,
Just as an aside, given the fact that we're going to have staff taking equipment home, school equipment home, and that includes us as well, do we have, or will we be establishing a policy around that and what those parameters are in terms of what it can be used for, how it can be used, who's responsible for what, if it gets stolen, I mean, how do we recoup our equipment if necessary?
Right, one of the three projects that we had Selt kind of stay over with us on was the integrative classroom instruction piece, which concluded. A second one was the realignment document that's needed for the DOE around the 5 to 10 year technology plan. And the third piece was drafting an acceptable use policy for our students and our staff. So they have sent me a draft. When I get back from vacation next week, I will look through it. We'll have hopefully a technology subcommittee meeting before our meeting on the 18th, and we would be voting a policy or new procedure that will cover that range of topics.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the motion? Roll call, please.
Ms. Rosikowicz?
Yes.
Ms. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Conway?
Yes.
Mr. Gignac?
Yes.
Mr. Leary?
Yes.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
Mayor Murphy?
Yes.
7 yeas approved.
Entertain a motion also to accept the report and place on file by Ms. Martin, seconded by Mr. Leary. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Next, we have disposal of surplus vehicles. Madam Superintendent.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, this is a request to declare a vehicle as surplus and approve the vehicle being advertised by the City of Lowell procurement officer to the highest bidder for your approval.
Mr. Gignac.
Move for approval.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Leary. Roll call, please.
Ms. Rosikowicz?
Yes.
Ms. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Conway?
Yes.
Mr. Gignac?
Yes.
Mr. Leary?
Yes.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
Mayor Murphy?
Yes.
7 yeas approved.
Thank you. Next, we have part-time computer repair technician. Madam Superintendent.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a request from Mr. Lang to hire a part-time computer repair technician. It appears that the existing person who worked at Lowell High School is retiring, and so there's a recommendation to approve the establishment of a part-time computer repair technician up to 19 hours a week at the current rate of $23.85. Total cost for this particular position would be $23,564 to have this person that would be housed at Lowell High School.
Thank you. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Ms. Rosikowicz?
Yes.
Ms. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Conway?
Yes.
Mr. Gignac?
Yes.
Mr. Leary?
Yes.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
Mayor Murphy?
Yes.
7 yeas approved.
Thank you. Next, we have convention and conference requests. Lowell High School ROTC staff, Lieutenant Colonel Peter D'Amico, Master Sergeant Kevin Casilli, and Sergeant David Smith, along with Lowell High School staff Michael Jarvis, to travel to Fort Devens, Massachusetts, with approximately 70 students to attend the Massachusetts 771 Summer Leadership Program from Saturday, August 18th, returning on Monday, August 20th, 2012. Additional chaperones are being queried. There's no cost to the school department budget.
Move for approval.
Move for approval by Mr. Gignac, second by Mr. Leary. Roll call, please.
Ms. Rosikowicz?
Yes.
Ms. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Conway?
Yes.
Mr. Gignac?
Yes.
Mr. Leary?
Yes.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
Mayor Murphy?
Yes.
7 yeas approved.
Recognize at this time Ms. Rosikowicz.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to let our viewers know that the Sullivan Middle School students have created an
Viewer.
art exhibit. I'm sorry?
Viewer. Let our viewer know.
Viewer. Oh. So, at any rate, thank you for the interruption. So our Sullivan Middle School students have created a fabulous art exhibit in celebration of the summer reading list. And that would be a great segue to let all of our parents know that school is fast approaching and those lists need to be done. So it's an excellent opportunity to go to the Paula Memorial Library and check out their books. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Entertain a motion to adjourn by Mr. Gignac, seconded by Ms. Martin. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed? We stand adjourned.